G'day fans and welcome to Good Old DNA Reviews, where we're going to be talking about good old Kenobi. Obi-Wan Kenobi, the new series has come out last Friday. It's very exciting stuff and we're here to pick it apart and see what we thought of it, Mr. Aron. What do you reckon?
Well, I've got my favourite Empire Strikes Back t-shirt on and my regular reviewing hat on, so I think it's going to be a long, interesting show with lots of interesting comments and conversation.
Yeah, indeed. Long is actually the key word. It's we've got 2 episodes to cover off. We were toying with the idea of doing part 1 last night and part 2 tonight, but it hasn't worked out. So as we said in the promo, if you saw it on Facebook, make sure you have your blue milk and your Java juice handy, and because we've got a fair bit to cover off, and which is a good thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing. So we'll have to see what happens. Now, the funny thing is, of course, that Aaron and I have not chatted about this show at all, so we have no idea what each other's opinions might be. So we could be going along through this and I go, oh, that's an awesome bit. And you'll go, man, that was a crap bit. So we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah.
Yay, team. Absolutely fantastic. Anything you wanted to mention before we get going, Mr. Aaron, because we've got so much to talk about.
There's a few people here just warning you. It's a no holds bar show. This is going to be full of spoilers and analysis. So if you haven't watched it, maybe watch this on replay later. Or if you don't care about spoilers, listen along.
Exactly right. So what we're doing it in like part 1 and part 2. So we're obviously going to be doing them in order and as they appeared. And as we've done in previous episodes, we're sort of breaking this down scene by scene and various other details and all the rest of it. And Andrew's already said that he really liked it. And that's actually a cool thing. Just to reiterate what you just said, yes, there will be spoilers. So block your ears if there are things you don't want to hear. But if you're like a real nerd, you would have already checked it out. So it's very good and groovy stuff. Now, normally I would ask you, give me 3 words or less, what did you think of it? But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to say that to the very end because I got a gut feeling that I already know what your response will be. So let us kick it off. Grant has said he loved every second of it. It's an interesting sort of turnaround. One thing we did say like weeks ago that this was the make or break show, right? If this show had to work after what happened with the Book of Boba Fett, it had to be successful. It had Ewan McGregor back in. It was all about Kenobi. Everybody loved it. Yada yada yada. It had to work, and we'll see what everybody thinks of it as we go along. But we're going to be breaking it down bit by bit. So let's kick it off. And of course, the first thing that happened is that we ended up having like a previously in the Star Wars universe sort of scenario with a what I call there an overdue Lucasfilm limited love letter to the prequel trilogy. What do you think of all that, Mr. Aaron?
That was fantastic. And it was one of those things where I get the tingles at the cinema, especially at the first time of a Star Wars movie when that comes up. And when that came up, I got the tingles at home. And it almost is a seal of this is going to be good. If they put that at the start of it, you're going to get something exceptional.
And I tell you what, I get very, very happy when Aaron gets the tingles. What can I say? DJ has said that the recap was actually interesting, and it was because the funny thing is that if you know your history of Star Wars, the Lucasfilm and Disney were very anti-prequel trilogy for many, 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 many years. But in this, they've actually said, yep, it is all based around the prequel trilogy, which was really good to see. And I thought, well, because I had to explain to my other half up front, oh, this is what's going on. But then they showed it all in the flashbacks anyway. And I thought, oh, well done, guys, good on them. So it was good to see. And we've got Mr. Dale joining us from Star Walking, which is absolutely fantastic. Hope you guys enjoy the show. One thing that, and I've written down the bottom here, one thing the show will suffer from, and this obviously is the case with anything that's prequel related, is we know how everything ends. So it's a bit like if you want to use the Star Trek analogy in Star Trek Voyager, they're never going to get home early because you've got no series. So we do know that certain things are going to happen or are not going to happen. But be that as it may, it was not a bad way to start. And I agree with you. It was very good stuff. Christy's bucking the trend. She wasn't a fond of most of the show. That's very, very interesting. Oh, we're here. Happy to hear more of your thoughts as we go along. And we are very, very much encouraging people to post their opinions. So, yes, good stuff. You wanted to say something?
I think it's gone what I was going to say. I was going to say something, but I think
DJ Graves said the recap was color corrected to look like the rest of the D+ shows, which, yeah, that's a good point. Actually, it did look very, very schmick, and it was nice to see it all cut down. So much Phantom Menace stuff through the show that was like considered the abomination of the entire saga. We had all this footage in it. It was fantastic. Yeah.
What I was going to say, it does fall into the prequel thing where you've got the Clone Wars is mentioned once, and then in your head you can imagine for years what the Clone Wars was, and then the prequels come out and you see them, and for some people that's disappointing. But I think there's enough room to move in this era. Because it hasn't really been spelt out anywhere, that it could be disappointing, but I think it's been handled really well.
Very much so. So the first thing we see, and of course, when we first see it, we're not 100% sure as to where we are, but it was Coruscant at its finest, and I didn't realize until afterwards. You had the Senate building down here on the right-hand side, which was particularly groovy. And as we pulled back, we saw plants, and I go, where the hell are there plants on Coruscant? But as it turns out, it was on the Jedi Temple with the younglings. Yeah. Now, based on this, it looks like these are older than the ones we've seen previously. So we've seen little kids, in Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, but these ones looked a bit older, which I thought was particularly interesting. So, but this was a really nice sequence because I didn't know if you twigged on it, but what was going to happen next? We're sitting there going, oh, okay, because we'd seen the flashback in Order 66, but of course it just sort of kicks in and away we go. And I don't know if you know this, but I believe one of the younglings, that lady there, is actually meant to be Reva. Although the problem is the age doesn't match up because in real life, Moses Ingram is 27 years old. And here, if she add 10 years to this actress, you would end up being like 17, 18, 19. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the thing I've just done in my head is gone. Everyone in Star Wars is alien, and they just all age slightly differently from us, and that fixes a multitude of sins when it comes to the timelines.
Yeah, so if it is her, and you would think logically would have to be, it's like, why would you pick on these younglings? Because clearly they sort of escape. It would make sense that it is her, and there's obviously more of a backstory to go with that, which there is something we're going to be sort of discussing a little bit later on. Dale said the opening was devastating. I'm assuming you mean that in a positive way, because it was. It was very, very groovy. And you are right. Once you got into the whole Order 66 thing, I mean, even I thought, oh my goodness, this is spectacular. It was a really, really good scenic moment. And even I thought, you're seeing all the Jedis getting killed down over here and over here. And it was pretty full on. What do you think?
I do love that Order 66 is a pivotal part in the Star Wars universe. And one of the things that surprised me in Rebels is they did Order 66 from that point of view. And now we've seen it from a different point of view again. And I think that's really amazing because it is a pretty interesting set of events that happened then. And to see it from different views, the more we get of it, the better from my point of view.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And of course, this does emphasize that the younglings find their way to escape. And of course, that means if they got out, who else got out? And that sort of branches into a lot more discussions that we can have regarding that. But so you have to assume that, Reva's one of the younglings. She's gotten away, and then something happens to her that turns it to the dark side, which we are going to cover off. And you are right, DJ. This actually occurred in the Book of Boba Fett. Who was the Mandalorian? One of the two, using actual clone troopers instead of CGI guys. And so you're correct, but not correct. It's the first time. It's actually the second time. So the first time was actually was it Mandalorian when they showed Grogu getting rescued? It's one of those two scenes, and you see all the Jedi getting killed off, and he's looking through in the undercover. But yes, you are correct. Dudes in suits can't knock that at all. So clearly our younglings get away. We sort of got an idea as to what's going on there. So that brings us to where we're starting off from 10 years later. So using Star Wars, the numbering or dating system, it is 9 years before A New Hope. So for those people who sort of didn't or couldn't put 2 and 2 together, which is pretty groovy. And we're back at Mos Eisley again. So once again, we're stuck on Tatooine. We just can't get away from this damn planet.
So I thought it was good coming back to Tatooine in this because let's face it, we all know that Ben wound up on Tatooine. And also, I don't know why, I thought this looked more cinematic than it has in previous TV series.
One thing the show does not suffer from is its production design and its values and the way the world building is outstanding in this, and it's followed on from the other shows, and it's just ramped it up a little bit more, especially when you start getting off world into different places. DJ, don't go. Oh, it's a simple mistake, dude. Don't stress over it. So no problem at all. But yes, we are 10 years after Revenge of the Sith, 9 years before New Hope. The funny thing is, you can start looking for the details. So as I've said there, things are never good when everybody's looking to the sky. So clearly something bad's going to happen. And at this point, I don't know if you picked up on this, but there are no stormtroopers in any of these scenes. So the Empire doesn't have a presence on this planet as yet. Did you notice that at all?
I did notice that, and I guess we'll talk about that later as well in other places where they do and don't appear. But I did think it was cool that we're in the stage in A New Hope, you see it's like 10 years later and they say we finally, got rid of the Senate finally. We're in the middle of the stage where I guess the Empire is forcing democracy out and getting a grip through the galaxy. So it is good to see that, there are planets like this that are, when they get a visit from the Inquisitors, it's a big major deal kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly right. Thomas said the landscapes and backdrops have to change as time goes by. Yeah, it can be. I mean, we are talking short time periods here. We're not talking like generations or anything. So a mountain in the background will still be the same mountain 100 years from now. So, but yeah, I see where you're coming from. But it still sort of works. And of course, as we said, it has to be set on Tatooine. It's just the nature of how the story works. And yes, and you are right, Grant. They don't like sand. But for whatever reason, we keep going back there. Now, this, of course, brings us to the Inquisitors. Now, of course, for those who didn't know this, the Inquisitors were all sort of a part of Rebels, and they were the main bad guys in that. And of course, when we see the Inquisitors appear here, for people who'd watched Rebels, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, we've seen these guys before. For anybody who's never seen the animated series, they'd be going, oh, who's this? And this is once again following on that from the tradition of bringing in animated characters into live action. So if you didn't know, yes, they are a part of Rebels. And of course, they have been hunting Jedi down for a long time. So in A New Hope, when Kenobi says to Luke, oh, yeah, Vader helped the Empire hunt down and destroy the Jedi Knights, it's almost like he handballed that task off to the Inquisitors. And they ended up running around killing everybody. And of course, this is 10 years later. So they're starting to run out of dudes to find. But it was interesting to see them in a live action. That's for sure.
Yeah, I thought they were really good. I thought they did a good job in bringing sort of the CG characters into the live action universe. I was getting Hellraiser Pinhead vibes from one of them. There is a particular Cenobite that has CDs stuck in him, and every time I saw the Grand Inquisitor, I'm like, oh, that reminds me a lot of that. That is not a bad thing. I thought they were quite intimidating and very well done.
Christy said, can't they find other extras? Yeah, that's an interesting one. Extras are always great to watch because some of them just can't act to save their lives. But you are right. They're probably all on the payroll, the Lucasfilm payroll. And they go, whenever we need background dudes, we just call them the same people, give them a different outfit and away they go. So, yeah, if you do notice them reappearing in different shows, it can sort of take you out of the series a bit. I get that. So, yeah. I'm completely with you. All right, so the main bad dude, of course, is the Grand Inquisitor. Now, because he's been around since Rebels, fans used to call him the Grand Inky. So the very sort of unglamorous name there, just like Palpatine used to be known as Palps or Palpy. So we've got the Grand Inky. And, of course, he was a Jedi Temple guard back in his early days. And, of course, once Order 66 took place, he sort of changed his mind and became a bit of a bad dude and whatever else. But that's how he looks in Rebels. And I think a few people did complain about the fact that he lost his, it's called a Powan, he's from Utapau, the narrow face. He's got the more fleshed out human face. And I tend to agree, it sort of lacks a little bit of the intensity that the animated version have. Did you have any thoughts and views on that?
I didn't mind. I think you get sort of more emotional range out of someone who is just an actor with makeup rather than going the full CGI. That said, I can understand if this was your favorite character, you might be a bit disappointed if it turned up looking so different from what you were used to in the other series.
Yeah, because in if you know Revenge of the Sith, Bruce Spence played a character from Utapau, Tion Medin, and he has the very, very long, narrow face, which kind of worked for his character. But yeah, to say, I don't know who this actor was. I mean, he was very good as the Inquisitor. I got no problem with that. But yeah, I did find, I was like, oh, okay, he just looks like a human wearing Utapau or Powan makeup. So yeah, but that's only a small quibble. There's certainly nothing wrong with his performance, that's for sure. So yeah, and you are right, Mr. Dale. Yeah, Steele Saunders from Steel Wars podcast was an extra in the series as well, which is particularly groovy. Now, of course, the Grand Inky, I know it's a very, very unflattering name, well, of course, was in Rebels, but he wasn't the only one. The fifth brother is also from Rebels. And as I looked at this, I thought, okay, it's the same character, but clearly the animated version looks far more threatening and scarier than just a dude wearing makeup with a helmet on his head. How'd you find that, dude?
Well, it's the same thing. I actually don't mind it because it reminds me more of how things would have done when A New Hope was filmed, where it's more going to be the actors with makeup rather than doing full CGI characters. So I'm actually quite fine with this because I guess the doctrine in my head is the Empire eventually weeded out all the all the aliens and just had white dudes in charge because, you know, they're dictators, and this is going that way where there's less and less aliens. But I can understand as well that, you know, people want weird aliens and them to look exactly the same. It's something I guess everyone has a different opinion on.
Yeah, it probably comes under the heading of the TV budget. And of course, Kenobi being part 1, part 2, whatever, at the end will be like a long movie that's like 4 hours long, 5 hours long. And of course, if it was produced as a film, it would have a much higher budget, and maybe the Grand Inky and the fifth brother would actually look like their animated counterparts because they're on a lower budget. They go, you know what? Best we can do is put a dude in a suit, paint his face up, and yay, we're good to go. Now, of course, if you've never watched Rebels, you wouldn't know that, right? You think, I'm seeing these dudes as they are. It's all good. But if you're really proficient with Rebels, you'd be sitting there going, oh, that's a bit unfortunate. It's not a showstopper, but it's certainly something worth noticing.
It's one of those things that funny. People complain about it, but those actors still probably had to get there at 3 a.m. or in makeup for 4 or 5 hours to get them to look like that. So there would have been a lot of effort put into how they looked, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely love it. Now, we ended up in another saloon. There's plenty of saloons in good old Mos Eisley. I like this one that had no doors. It was kind of groovy. And you'll notice the lightsaber in the back of the Grand Dinky's back. We're going to be discussing that much later on. I know that you're going to want to talk about this. But I did like the fact that this thing was completely open. And, of course, they walk in. It's the old scenario. People just sort of shitting themselves because these dudes have turned up and looking for a Jedi. Now, of course, the irony being that when they say they're looking for a Jedi, we automatically think they're looking for Kenobi. But, of course, they're not looking for somebody else. I thought, what are the chances of 2 Jedi being on the same planet? So, yeah, very groovy.
Yeah, I kind of thought he was there because maybe he was looking for Kenobi as well.
I don't know, maybe. It's a good point. So that introduces us to Reva, who's the third sister. And for those who are wondering, there are apparently 11 Inquisitors overall, and there's only 2 humans, and Reva's one, and another lady is the other one from Jedi Fallen Order. And how did you find her characterization? Because clearly she's meant to be the main antagonist here, even though the Grand Inquisitor is meant to be the leader of the bad guys.
Well, she's obviously the brash one who wants to, you know, do everything. I don't think to impress the Grand Inquisitor, more to impress Vader and the Emperor, probably. I did think they jumped into, you know, she's being pushy and being disruptive maybe a little bit too fast, but obviously it's going to serve the story. And of course, there's the antagonism there because she probably came from being a youngling where the others didn't. So that causes an almost class system where she's looked at as lesser than the other ones that are there.
Yeah, and we're sort of going to bring up a point about that later on. It was an interesting one because she's the only one who's actually like obviously human, and she's meant to be the real evil badass, you know, all this sort of thing. And to me, it sort of came across like she was pushing it too hard. It's like, okay, I'm the baddie. I'm going to go around and killing dudes and slicing dudes and I mean all this sort of thing. And I don't know if it necessarily worked, but it wasn't bad. But I don't know if it's, you know, massively successful. So I guess the jury's out, and from my perspective anyway, the jury's out for a period of time, and we'll see how it all pans out. But it did look like they're kind of pushing the envelope a little bit. So
there were a couple of moments with her, especially right at the start of the episode, where I thought where she's doing an end run around what the Grand Inquisitor is saying, and I thought, do you know what? If you're in the Empire, you'd just be decapitated for that straight away, almost.
Yeah. Christy mentioned about the whining about Obi-Wan was pathetic. Well, yeah, this is obviously something we don't know about yet. What's the deal between her and Kenobi? She's clearly got a beef regarding him, and I guess it'll all get revealed as time goes on. But yes, it's an interesting one. She's keen to get Kenobi. Nobody else seems to be. So it's a bit of an unusual situation.
I would say because this is such an expensive series, everything they show has got to come back and mean something. I would say because of what we saw with the opening with the Order 66, you might have some flashbacks to that later to see what actually happened beyond that, where maybe she blames Obi-Wan for not getting her out or something like that.
Although, even though we're jumping way ahead here, at the end of the second episode, when she finally does meet him, as it were, she doesn't say that. Right, she's referring to something else, so that's still left uncovered. But yeah, she did have a bit of a grizzle about Kenobi. Fair point there, Christy. I'm with you. I did find this interesting. Okay, let's talk more action. And you're right, the Grand Dinky is a bit of a chatterbox. And if you want to find out where a Jedi is, you just chuck something at a dude, and it gets held in space. And I thought, oh, this is pretty groovy. And of course, that was it. Bang, good old Nari's been sprung bad. I thought this was kind of groovy, and it is good to see that good old-fashioned knives have still got a place in the old galaxy far, far away. What do you reckon?
Yep, from this or cutting giant sushi. I did wonder when they threw the knife if it wasn't one of the other Inquisitors that stopped it. I didn't realize straight away that it was another Jedi in there that had done it. I thought they were doing the good Inquisitor, bad Inquisitor routine kind of thing to try and get more information at first.
So you're trying to say the good inky and the bad inky, eh?
Yeah.
So, all right. So there you go. So the dude's been exposed and he's out on the run and all the rest of it. So then we end up in Tatooine. And I found this interesting, right? Now, obviously, it's meant to be a Krayt dragon, but somebody said, and I agree with them, if you look at the face, it looks like a whale or a shark because you've got the eye there, you've got the pointy there, and you've got the mouth there. And I go, hey, it does too. And I thought, what the hell would a whale be stuck in the sand for? What's the deal with that?
I did wonder if, you'll come back to this week after week and it is the set of bones you see from A New Hope or something. Probably not. I don't think it'd be there for 10 years. But I did wonder if it was a cut Krayt dragon or something else when we saw it. Because it doesn't.
Yeah, I had to look it up because I did think it's like, what is that? Because if you look at a Krayt dragon's design, it doesn't really look like that, but it does look like a shark. This part here looks very shark-like. I don't know if that's intentional or not. So, sand shark, who knows? But it's not meant to be. It's meant to be a Krayt dragon. But I did find that quite interesting. And of course, if you're carving up fresh meat out in the open suns, right, it would get a tad whiffy. So it does kind of hark back to Tika's line later on the Jawa saying how Obi-Wan stinks. But tell you what, if this is a production line for fresh meat, they're going to be chowing down in this Krayt dragon for Yonkensburgs. What do you reckon?
I did wonder in the middle of the desert, how long does a carcass like that actually survive before you can't eat the meat anymore? But you are right. I did think it was a really interesting scene. I can't think of another movie where, you've got a carcass of an animal and they've moved in to make a sushi production line out of it.
Yeah, and somebody actually said, being a bit pedantic, I should maybe starting to brown on the outsides, and it's going off and whatever. It's like, yeah, whatever, dude. Moneybag Sullivan or Daniel said he thinks it's a Poogle. I don't know what that is. Apparently, it's been confirmed as a Krayt dragon, even though I don't think it looks like one, but whatever. It looks like the whales from Rebels when Ezra disappeared. Yeah, that's true. But yeah, either way, if it looks like a shark on Tatooine, as to why, it's anybody's guess. So, it's a good point. Why couldn't droids do this? It's a very good point, actually. And maybe you could argue that the local employer said, no, we want to support the local economy by hiring people, even though we're not paying them the full amount, as we saw in the episode. It's a very good observation, though. It's a menial job. Maybe the unions all acted up and said, no, we want human beings to do this, not droids. And, who knows?
Yeah. Well, sand gets in everywhere with droids, and they have to have the oil baths. And if they don't want to set up the oil baths, I don't think they can get droids to do it for too long.
Now, personally, I thought this was a great introduction to Paul Obi-Wan, right? So he's working on the production line, and I think this was definitely the strength of the series, or the show at least, that he's showing that he's a lost and broken sort of dude. And he's working on the production line. He's taken the meat for his EOP, which I'm going to get to in a second. And I thought this was a really good introduction. It's like, where did the guy end up? And here he is here. And it's just like, that was almost heartbreaking to a large degree. What do you reckon?
It really was. I didn't know how they were going to introduce Obi-Wan. And like you said, I think it was a really heartfelt and absolutely perfect way to do it, where he is broken. He doesn't stand up for anyone anymore. And he's doing menial labor just to survive.
Yep, totally agree. You're right. Jabba's palace did have kitchen staffed by droids, and we saw that in the book of Boba Fett, but they were indoors. This is all outdoors, so I don't know. But it's a fair point, though. I hear you. But I guess in the Star Wars universe, droids are looked upon as being the minority peoples, if you will. And maybe someone somewhere said, no, we don't want droids to do it because, one, someone's got to buy them and support them and oil bath them, as you said. We want to hire people to do the job. Maybe people are more efficient.
You don't have to say thank you to lower life forms.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. And ironically, although having said that, if you did have droids, you could work 24 hours a day. So anyway, we work on that as it is. So Ben wasn't hiding that he was stealing the meat each day. Yeah, I worked on the view that he was just been there for so long, and maybe everybody's taken a slice of meat for whatever reason to take home to their families. But I don't believe he was using the Force. He's suppressed it, and we see that in episode 2. He's clearly suppressed it, hasn't been using it for a long period of time, and I think he just takes it. Maybe it's like if you work in a production line for anything, like whether it be a chocolate factory or whatever, you take a little bit, no one cares. It's rather than trying to sell it all on the black market. And who knows, maybe he knows the guy, and the guy said, yeah, take a bit for your horse. Does it work? And,
the guy didn't seem to be the friendliest chap, did he? I did think it was going to come back and bite him that he had been stealing stuff. They do usually introduce stuff like that for a reason. I did think the second time we saw him, he was going to get fired or something, but didn't
The key
happen.
thing about that sequence, and I thought this was really important. The dude says, "Oh, you've shortchanged me the dollars, right?" And and the guy pushes him, and Kenobi doesn't do anything. He just lets it ride. Whereas the old Ben would have stood up and go, "Wait, you can't do that," and go to the guy's defense. So it just goes to show how submissive he's become, how he's just had to just fall into his shell and just go with the flow because obviously he can't afford to lose the job. And I thought that was a very, very telling moment because that's a massive character contrast to how he would have been back in the Clone Wars. It was like help the innocent sort of scenario. So yeah, no, I thought it was really, really good.
I mean, we'll talk about it later, but it really does show you that Owen seems to be braver than Obi-Wan.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a very good point, actually. You are right. That is going to come up. I like this. I really did. It's the commute to work, good old public transport. And if anybody's ever seen factory workers on public transport in the morning, this is exactly what it's like. Everybody's miserable, depressed. It's just like it completely emulates real life. No one's talking, and obviously in this universe, there's no mobile phones, so people aren't on their phones. So yeah, I thought this was really good, and I didn't mind the fact that we saw this 3 times. I just thought it was a way of emulating how everything is just the same. It's the same every single day. And it was really, really good.
It really does show you over the 10 years he's been there, his life has been worn down to the mundane.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So there you go. So DJ, I'd say it again, and no sense of heat. I'm not sure what we're referring to there, unless you're still talking about the Crow Dragon thing. So yeah, I'm not sure. So
and probably also no sense of smell.
True, could be too. Mind-numbing transportation, just like our world here. And I've been in that situation, been on buses at 6 a.m. with factory workers, and it's just like that's exactly how it is. So not everything in the galaxy far, far away is exciting and wonderful and like bells and whistles. There is boring shit, and we're seeing that firsthand here, which is kind of cool. Speaking of seeing things firsthand, Anchorhead finally makes an appearance. We heard about it a fair bit in A New Hope, and there you go. So another desert in the city.
Where's the anchor? Where's the head?
No, I don't know. It's buried in that little thing. I think there's only just one tower. You're thinking, who's up there? You could probably write an entire story about what's up there. But yeah, I thought that was particularly groovy, actually. So yeah, very, very good. Now I thought this. I did have a bit of a laugh. I thought, oh, is this the equivalent of a rented parking space? So instead of a car, he's got his Eope. And but I got to say, regarding the Eope, which doesn't roll off the tongue, how real did it look in this show? I don't know what they did if they filmed a real camel and just replaced the head digitally. I don't know. It was fantastic. What do you think?
Yeah, it blended seamlessly with what had gone before in the movies, and if anything, it was better. The one thing they have done with all of the series, I don't think you can complain about any of them. The special effects and the production values are top notch, and this was again all through this series so far as well.
Totally agree. Now, of course, the question you've got to ask yourself, is it the same Eope from Revenge of the Sith, which you can see sort of buried over there? And I think the idea is that it is. So he's had the same horse, if you will, for 10 years. And I almost had a bit of a tear up on this one. It's like his poor old horse is still sort of floating around, just walking backwards and forwards from his cave to the work, to the parking space. And just, it was his trust. Like, it was like Boba Fett's trusty Bantha, which was effectively what we saw, in the book of Boba Fett. So Boba Fett had his Bantha. Obi-Wan's got his Eope, all alone, riding in the desert, and they seem to emulate each other really well.
It really was when he walked off into the desert. One of those, he's just isolated. He's just got no life.
Yeah, pretty heartbreaking. Could be the air traffic control tower. Yeah, fair. Yeah. Could be too. I like the sound of that. And right, living in the desert. So he's not in the hovel yet. So that obviously comes later. He's living in a cave, which I thought was kind of groovy.
Greg,
the Eope outside. Huh?
Don't get ahead of yourself. You can't be cutting sushi and afford a hovel. You have a cave first, you know.
Yeah, totally agree. And as we just said, Daniel, the Eope looked fantastic. It really was good, and I actually felt for the Eope because I thought it's just his trusty old steed, which I thought was really groovy. But yeah, he's living in a cave, and of course, when he has his dinner, it emulates what happens decades later on Jakku with Rey. And I thought, how about that? So you pick up on that at all?
Rey got bread, and he got stew. So they have these sort of instant noodle packs by Maggi, but they're sort of the Tatooine version.
Maggie, absolutely fantastic. The lesser life forms, grazing, being thirsty and hot all the time. Well, we are working the view they are like camels and probably don't need a lot of water to keep them going, but they do like their cryo dragon meat. So
Yeah.
he's a well-fed Eopie, that's for sure. But yes, I did like this because I thought, okay, Kenobi's sitting there by himself having his meal, just like Rey does in The Force Awakens, which I thought was pretty groovy. You are right. Yes, the R2 periscope alarm system. That was particularly good, actually. So some poor R2's been buried in the sea. And everything.
The other thing I thought, though, I never imagined Eopies as carnivorous, and that happened the same in the book of Boba Fett. And I was thinking about it. There probably isn't much plant life on Tatooine, so you wouldn't get too many herbivores.
Yeah, that's a good observation, actually. So that brings us good old Kenobi's in there. He's had his chow down, and then he gets visited by the Tika, the Jawa. And of course, he's trying to get hold of the T-16 model that we see in. Obviously, it ends up with Luke at some point, as we see in the New Hope. This was a great sequence, and the fact that Tika, the Jawa, is saying Kenobi stinks, I thought it was great.
Yes,
well, it was really good.
I actually did think, because there was an alarm system there and the Jawa seemed to already be in the cave, that he had set up house with a Jawa, and it was going to be kind of like The Odd Couple with Tika and Obi-Wan, like sort of living together curmudgeonly and like having a bit of banter. But I did think this whole sequence I thought was fantastic and funny and well written.
Which was kind of ironic because he speaks just normal English, basic, but of course in the Book of Boba Fett, Pelimoto had to speak Jawaese, if you will.
Yeah,
what was the point of that? But yeah, it worked really well. And I love this one from Grant. He doesn't remember owning a droid because of the guilt of burying it in the sand. Oh, love it. Very cool. And so the key thing about this sequence, of course, is these moisture evaporators breaking down because the Jawas have pinched the bloody bit out the back. And you are right. Yeah, remember cleaning cost more. That was so clever. They're going to sell the parts back to him that they've stolen. Oh, awesome.
So the whole sequence was good. And you just imagine Jawas being exactly like that. So they captured that perfectly.
Because ironically, you don't know if Tika knows who Kenobi is. You just assume he's just a dude living in a cave, but he might be the only one who knows he's living there. So, because he obviously comes up on a regular basis selling bits and pieces and parts and whatever. So, for as far as Kenobi's concerned, he could be the only friend he has is this Jawa, and they clearly have a connection. It was just really well done, really thought out, and a lot of fun. And I did like the fact that when the Tika says, "Oh yes, there was a Jedi in Tatooine," because Kenobi's one too. And it's like the Inquisitors and everything. I love that. It's like if you're telling a friend, it's like, "Oh my God, you should have been there. There was all this stuff going on. There's this and that." I loved it. I thought it was excellent.
I did wonder when the Jawa goes, "It's good for business." I did wonder if how are Inquisitors good for business? Is it because they destroy a lot and the Jawas can move in and steal it all?
Yeah, that's a good point. So we end up with Nari's belt. Originally, I thought it was Kenobi's belt. And I thought it wouldn't be because he has his own. But they did mention that there was a crashed fighter there. And that confirms there's another Jedi on Tatooine, which is Nari. But I thought Kenobi would have been having a real think about, oh, my God, I haven't seen one of these in years. And it's someone else's. And it's like, what do you do? What do you do? Do I go out and find the guy or just like pretend he doesn't exist? I mean, it's a big planet. It could be anywhere. So, yeah, I thought there was quite telling, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, it was one of those things. I think the Jawa doesn't know who Kenobi is because he was talking to him about a Jedi belt, not knowing that he was a Jedi himself.
Yeah, that's a very good point, actually. He says, just some random old dude living in a cave. And that brings us to this line here. The Jedi are all but extinct, which is the line he says in A New Hope, which I thought was kind of telling. So it does show that Kenobi has just given up on everything, which is kind of sad. The only mission he's got left in life is watching good old Luke, which is his thing. And of course, in the interim, he's got all the PTSD, the bad dreams. And, some people have complained and said, how is it that he can see Anakin and the Naboo starfighter and all that? Because clearly he couldn't have, but as the audience, we saw it. But, it doesn't matter. I mean, the guy's got a busted head, effectively. And like some soldiers, that's what happens to them. And it was really sad.
I think if having a flashback of Anakin in the fighter is the worst thing about the series, they're really reaching for things to find, aren't they?
I totally agree with you. And of course, he's trying to connect with Qui-Gon. Now, you would assume by the end of the series he will, because Kenobi also has to learn how to become one with the Force, so he too can become a Force ghost. So there's that. But you did feel for the guy. So he's not just like having a good old, having a kip every once in a while, thinking, "Beauty, I'm going to sleep sweet dreams for everybody." No, he's going through some really tough times, and it was really well presented. The timing of it all, the isolation of it all, the fact that the guy really is just like a lost dude, was portrayed really well, and that helped with the fact that the episode is longer than your average 30-minute episode, going to 55 minutes. I thought, yeah.
Also, I think with the pre-title sequence of Yoda saying, "And I'll teach you how to commune with Qui-Gon," that really signposts that we're going to get Ewan McGregor at some point.
Yeah. You mean Liam Neeson?
Sorry, yes, we get Ewan McGregor at every point. Liam Neeson at some point.
And actually, it's why you bring that up. One of the things that has made the show work, and it wasn't just with Ewan, but it was all the other characters, is they use the same actors, right,
Yes.
from previous series, and that is fantastic for continuity. And I think kudos to the guys, as in Lucasfilm / Disney, to bring in actors from way back then. No one's been recast. They've used exactly the same people. I think maybe Brianna, Leia's mother, might be a different actress, but that aside, that's about the worst they've got. Keeping that continuity is fantastic, and that's what brings the fans in and go, you know what? And because a lot of people are watching this because Ewan came back, and even though between now and 9 years later, he's got to age a shitload load more to look like Alec Guinness. But that aside, it's a very good point.
Here's a question about returning characters. In the credits for episode 1, it says Bonnie Pierce as Aunt Beru, and I've watched it a couple of times and I couldn't see her in it.
No, maybe they're using the same credits for the entire series and she will pop up later on. But no, she definitely did not appear. And we know that for a fact because it occurs in this sequence here. So we're returning to the much-loved homestead. And for those who are wondering, from like the Attack of the Clones tombstones, they're off to the right-hand side. They're out of frame another 50 meters away, okay? So because you always look for those tombstones. You want to know where they are. But, yeah, the old homestead comes back. And, it was really, really good. And the fact we got to see Luke craving adventure and an excitement, it was grouse. It was really, really good. What do you think?
Do you know what I found interesting? I found interesting that even though he's lived with them for 10 years, as soon as he was out of sight, Uncle Owen became really worried about Luke straight away.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I do like the fact that he's up here and you can just see it straight away. Adventure and excitement and Jedi craves not these things. And it was wonderful. It was a really, really good moment. So, and even Kenobi was packing bricks thinking, guys, the kid just disappeared. I mean, it's a big freaking bloody desert. He's not going to just vanish. But I really thought that they did that very, very well. So, yeah. And you're right, Christy. Yes, the Desert Sons will age you terribly, as Kenobi will find out in the next 9 years. So, good stuff. So we finally get to see who's creeping around in the desert at night time. It's good old Nari, and probably not the most memorable Jedi of all time. But the key thing is that good old Kenobi is just not prepared to help him. It's like, as we said earlier, how times have changed. In the old days, would have been, yep, no worries, we're all together, one big happy family. But he said, no, we lost the war. Pack up, move on. And I reckon for this guy, that would have been absolutely like inconceivable.
It is interesting because I think Obi-Wan's journey in this is one of redemption for failing Anakin, and he's using that sort of redemption, looking at Luke so singly that he's ruled out everything else that's happening around him. Where you were totally right, he would have been the first person to defend this guy and help him, but he's got an eye so singly on what's Luke. Is his talents developing? Is he showing any signs that he himself has lost his way?
Yeah, and you can imagine from this guy's perspective, he was Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi, and now he just doesn't give a rat's ass about anything. It's like, oh, geez, that would kill you. And, of course, we know what happens to him later on. We jumped the gun over here. Speaking of continuity, he wants to know about the Grand Inky coming back. Well, the theory being that he hasn't died, right? So we'll get to that. You jump at the gun. That's at the end of the second episode, Daniel. We're still in the middle of the first one. So settle down, son. We'll get there eventually. So speaking of getting places, we saw a little bit of this in Revenge of the Sith. Now we get to see it here. Good old Alderaan. Hey, how groovy was this? Good old Aldera, which is the capital city. What do you reckon? Wasn't that a spectacular thing to check out?
This was absolutely fantastic. And this is one of the things I do think has maybe been missing from the Star Wars everything. Actually seeing an amazing futuristic planet that is peaceful and idyllic and doesn't have the Empire interfering or battle droids turning up in droves and stuff like this. It was really good to see a totally different aspect of the Star Wars universe that we've only kind of glimpsed before.
Yeah, Absolutely. And of course, if you took a picture of this and you could say this could be any sci-fi movie, you wouldn't really know. But yeah, the fact that it's Alderaan, and of course we know the fate of Alderaan, the production design on this is absolutely spectacular. So yeah, they did really, really well. And that, yes, you are right. It was beautifully done, and it was really good to see. So, and then of course that brings us into one. This is one thing that nobody had guessed. Right? They'd all watched the trailers. And they said, I wonder what the story's going to be. What's Kenobi going to do? Even I thought that. It's like, what's he going to do besides, carve up his Krayt dragon? And of course, Leia comes into the picture. It's like, oh, that's come out of completely left field. And even though some people have been a bit critical of the girl's acting and all that, I mean, yeah, cut her some slack. She's only a kid, but especially in this picture, she could easily be a young Carrie Fisher. I thought the casting was outstanding. What do you reckon?
I thought it was too. And when they went to Alderaan, and then suddenly I've got maybe they're going to show Leia, I almost teared up.
Yeah, it was so well done. And of course, we know her character that well, that we know where it's all going to go and her path and all the rest of it. And the fact that she is adopted, she's not actually biologically the child of Bale and Brianna. You could see where she doesn't fit in to the rest of the environment. And the fact that she's running away and put the stand-in girl to be like swap positions, much like her mother did, funnily enough. As I just thought of that just then with Padme, back in Phantom Menace days, having the decoy. Absolutely awesome. So yeah, very cool. I just realised that. Yeah, it's like a mother like daughter. Yeah, very cool.
What I thought was interesting, because I'm in the shop, I have different people come in and want to talk about different aspects of the episode. The one thing that a lot of people said was she was a really good mix of Padme and Anakin, where she had like talents and traits from both of them.
Yeah, totally agree. So just back here, Alderaan looked absolutely gorgeous, like it did in the Old Republic trailer. Yeah, it certainly did. Grant said that she thought she was great. I did too. I thought she was excellent. I mean, she's a little kid. She's got to behave like a little kid, so you got to deal with that. Is a cheeky tomboy princess? Yes, exactly right. You know what her heritage is and where she's going to be going. And yes, I thought she did really well for herself. Alderaan one day, blown to bits the next. Yeah, well, that was coming up 9 years later, as we well know. And Daniel said, love the attitude, growing up to be the Leia we know in New Hope. And that's the thing. You see all these little traits through her performance the whole way through. And there's little bits, little nuggets you pick out and you go, oh, there's this and oh, there's that. And we're going to cover a couple of those off as we go along.
Yeah.
So very, very cool. Now, this is something I picked up on. I don't know if you noticed it. You know how she's standing in the trees and she's picking out all the ships, right? This is just a very, very quick thing. One of the ships he picks out is a tri-wing. Believe it or not, that was actually designed by Porsche. So how's that? So the car company and Lucasfilm got together and they designed a ship. It was originally for Rise of Skywalker, ended up here. So
there you go. So no, I didn't know that. So there you go.
Yeah. So yes, that's where it is. So yeah, the tri-wing. That's what she says. Oh, that's a new one, which I thought was kind of groovy. All right, so we're on Alderaan, which looked really, really cool. And I thought, all the nerds like, who's the dude in the bushes? What's the deal with that? Is it a Sith Lord? Is it a Jedi? As the end, as it turned out, it was neither. What do you reckon?
Is it Boba Fett? No, it's the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Yes, I mean that was exactly right. So, but while we're waiting for that, it's like, while you're like slobbering at the mouth, thinking, who is that shifty dude in the trees? We go back to Tatooine, and you're right. This is where Owen returns, and I really like this because he's now echoing Phil Brown, who was the original Uncle Owen. His grumpier version of Owen Lars. Right, the sweetness from Attack of the Clones is sort of gone, and now he's become a bit of a hard ass. And I think that worked really well. You can see where this is going. What do you reckon?
Well, you would have seen the making of Attack of the Clones from years and years ago, and when they had Joel Edgerton on, he was mimicking the original Uncle Owen to try and get the accent right then. So it's almost the role that has taken him 20 years to perfect and play, and I thought he was pitch perfect. I thought he was one of the standouts of the episode for me, actually.
Yeah. I totally agree with you, and it was good that he came in and just chucked the T-16 on the floor and said, "No, don't even stay away from Luke and all the rest of it." And we know that there's a history between them. We just don't know what it is. And if you're taking it at face value from the movies, not reading the novelization, you go, okay, that wizard's just a crazy old man. So clearly, there's cross paths at some point, and of course, Luke doesn't know about his parentage or his history. So, it's a very interesting dynamic between the two of them, which I thought was kind of cool. So yes, one of the trailer I was expecting more than what we got. Okay, well that's fair enough, Christy. I'm not sure if you're referring to the characters specifically or the show, but you wanted to say something, dude?
I was just going to say, I don't know if you highlighted it because this is when it happened, but he had left him the toy, and Owen was returning it, saying, "Nah, you're not having a bar of that. Stay away," kind of thing. My call for the last scene of this show is Owen gives the toy to Luke and lets him have it.
Yeah, could be too, because clearly Luke ends up with one. Because as Tika mentioned, they're hard to find. So there you go.
Yeah.
As another little gag. Okay, now this is obviously meant to be serious, but you can take it with a bit of a laugh. It's a new addition to the chopped off hands of Star Wars. It used to be a website produced years ago. You know, there's always someone losing a limb in the Star Wars universe, and there's another one to add to the list. So I thought I'd just
the website was dormant for a long time, but now they've had to update it.
Yeah, there you go. Chrissy's mentioned. Sorry.
They probably had one of those tickers that says no hands for like 777 days, and then they had to go all the way back to zero. Sorry, Chris, what we were going to highlight.
Gotcha. Christy wanted to say about the interaction between Ben and Owen. It didn't really work for her. That's fair enough. I mean, it's all sort of starting off, and you do think that at some point they'll get back together again. But yeah, that's fair enough. With that in mind, clearly you can't kill him because he's got to survive for the sequel story, which is like 9 years later. So, and that's where he's going to cark it. He's going to end up on a barbecue. So if you say to Owen, which would you rather do, get sliced and diced with a lightsaber now or end up as a barbecue later, 9 years later? What do you reckon?
Well, I don't think that she knows that she can't kill him because he's alive in the in the stories down the track. I thought this was a really fantastic scene because what it did was do this flip where Owen is now the brave one and Obi-Wan is lurking around in the shadows, not knowing what to do, not knowing if he should come out and reveal himself, and just hoping that, you know, nothing happened where he'd have to reveal himself. So I thought this was a really good scene. What I loved is the interaction between the Grand Inquisitor and her, and how there's a difference in how they're treating things already. Like you said, she's a lot more aggressive and a lot more going for it. And in this scene, you can see that she really is going for it.
Yeah, and as I said at the start of our review, the biggest issue you have with shows like this is when you know things are going to happen a certain way. So clearly she's not going to kill him, right? And we see him in A New Hope. So it's like you can threaten him all you want, but you know it's not going to occur. But the fact that Kenobi's watching the whole time, and it's like the one character she's looking for, the one person is just over there. If you turn left and look behind he's behind you sort of scenario. It was there the whole time. But I did like the fact that he stood up to her. And, of course, when she says, oh, what if I kill this guy and his family? And, of course, that includes Luke. Imagine if she had to follow through with that. The entire galaxy far, far away would have ended up completely different. So, now, this is a very good point from DJ about, because they're using the volume, which is the digital background thing, has no sense of heat. It looks right, but then none of the actors are sweating or squinting in the sun like they would be filmed in tuning. Yeah, look, that's a fair point, and that is a fair point. You are filming in enclosed environment, and it's not 100% realistic with two suns beating down on you. As we're saying, like working on the Crate Dragon meat farm, it should be absolutely horrendous, even for human beings to try and put up with that. So yeah, it's a fair call. So I guess there are some things we kind of, once again, it's a TV budget. If it was a film, they may have actually gone out to Tunisia and done it for real. But unfortunately, this is just how things work.
That's actually one of the issues I have with the remastered editions of the movies is in Star Wars. When I went to the cinema and saw it originally, the light was harsh and you felt the harshness of Tatooine. In the remastered edition, they've gone for warmness rather than harshness. And that's one of the things that they haven't been able to capture again since that original movie, I don't think.
Yeah, that's a fair point. So, there's not much you can sort of really do about that, I guess. And I guess at least visually, it still looks interesting, even if it's not completely true to life. Colin has asked, did he purchase the toy, as in the T16, from your store? Yeah. Typical. Oh, no, he couldn't afford it from bloody Aron's store. I don't know those prices there. So. Yes, and I agree. Yeah, I agree. I don't think the jar was shop there. Very, very cool. All right, so I'm sort of changing the sequences around a little bit just for ease of discussion. So it is a defining moment, right? So Owen didn't give up the family, not because of Ben, but to save Luke. They've both got their different priorities. Clearly, Owen wants to keep him at the farm. Ben wants to train him, even though he had a bit of a bad day at the office with Anakin. You do wonder if you'd never seen Star Wars before, you do wonder watching this how things were going to pan out. But of course, we know what the eventual outcome would be.
When Owen says to her, "I have no love for the Jedi scum," and all of that, I truly think if she was using the Force to see if he was telling the truth, he probably was telling the truth.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly right. Yes, and I totally agree with you. I mean, it's kind of ironic because he met Anakin when Anakin was Anakin, the old half brother, as it were, and now he's just gone completely anti Jedi. Yeah, because of the way things have sort of transpired. So the volume works fantastically for other environments inside ships and seven Blade Runner, but it's too much obvious in Tatooine because we spent so much time there. That's exactly right. I mean, we have been to Tatooine a lot, and yeah, it's just one of those things, as we said earlier. TV budget, there's only certain things they can do. I mean, if the budget was higher, they'd probably make the Grand Inky look a bit more alien, as well as the Fifth Brother and a whole lot of other things, and a lot more aliens. There isn't so many aliens in the show, but yeah, it is what it is. So, not to worry. All right. So one thing we do discover is that the dark siders are always having a barney with each other. They're always fighting amongst themselves, which of course is a Sith trait. Right? That's the reason why the Sith destroyed each other. And of course, she's got this whole thing. Riva, we've really mentioned this about that. She's got this 10 years of finding Kenobi, but we don't know why. And I guess that will have to come out a bit further down the track. And she's prepared to violate the orders of her order, as it were, to try and get him. So she's got a beef for good old Benny. What do you reckon?
Well, the thing is, there isn't a lot of reason for them to for her to like them. They're often calling her gutter trash and scum and grew up in the gutter. So it isn't like a close-knit community that work together in harmony. They're always going to, butt heads anyway. But I think that's the nature of the dark side. But we will, of course, see why she's so aggressive to Kenobi. It'll come up, like you say.
Yep.
I totally agree.
Totally agree. I actually reckon that Reva doesn't have the same skill set as a full Jedi or Sith. Well, she wouldn't, because she only got as far as being a youngling, if we're basing on what we know.
Yeah.
So she's not as tough, although she, as we see in episode 2, she can mind meld with normal dudes. That is a fair point. So you would think on the power scale, she's a bit on the lowest end, but this is sort of jumping ahead. But of course, they're saying a lot of the Inquisitors were ex-Jedi, so we'll cross that. Sit tight. We'll cross that when we get further along. All right. So we're going through Tatooine. We're zipping right back to Alderaan again. And of course, we get to see Bail Organa. Now, as some people have pointed out, Jimmy Smits was awesome to see him. I love it. And as I said earlier, the continuity of the same actors, fantastic. He does look a bit older here than he does in Rogue One, which of course is 9 years after this, even though in our lifetime, it was like 7 years before or whatever. But I was rapt to see him. I thought, love it. Absolutely love it.
You have got to love in the Star Wars universe when they like a fashion, they stick with it their entire life, don't you?
Yep. Mon Mothma was a classic for that. 20 years wearing the same outfit.
Another thing that I thought was great on Alderaan is a lot of unused Ralph McQuarrie artwork was loud and proud. Those guards and all of that were designed way back in the 70s and 80s and never were used. And then they've obviously enhanced it and expanded on it. But it shows you that these designs are timeless, for me anyway.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And it just reinforced just the beauty of the place, which I thought was kind of cool. So even at this year, so we're learning everything we know about Leia, we're sort of really picking it up from here. So we can clearly see even at this age, this whole senatorial diplomatic life isn't her cup of tea. And I thought that worked really well. She's waving to the crowd, but clearly her mind is elsewhere, which I thought was particularly groovy. And of course, this just reinforced we're a peaceful planet with no weapons, and of course, it doesn't end well for these guys. But that was just I just wanted to put this in because it was a beautiful image. And, very, very cool.
Yeah, it does. The color scheme and everything. What I really love is societies in Star Wars seem to be very well researched, and you can see that like it's a holistic approach whenever they do a different society. And Alderaan looks like they all should be on Alderaan. It's a fantastic addition to Star Wars canon.
Yep, totally agree. All right, so we end up with the senatorial party thing, and this was really, really. There's a lot to take out of this entire scene, right?
Yeah.
So Bail is talking to this dude. I don't know this guy's name, and he's more interested in not saving the slaves in the universe, actually just gaining power, and that brings home the whole concept of centrist and populist. I don't know if you've heard that term before, but after the Empire falls, there's all these people who say, no, we want all the galaxy to be ruled by the planets look after themselves. And then you've got the other group who say, no, we want the Empire to come back, right? Yeah. Because even as negative as the Imperial Empire was, it wasn't negative to everybody. There are some people who said, you know what, I could still grab power, I could still become rich, I could still make a name for myself, even though the Empire is in control. And that was a good example of this sequence, where the guy on the right says, "No, I'm not interested in freeing slaves. I just want to line my pockets." And that happens at any sort of dictatorship. Those are for it, those are against it. And I thought this was a really, really nice moment. I mean, there's more I could discuss regarding the centrists and the populists, but it's a longer discussion and it will take a little bit too long. But it was a very, very poignant moment. Did you notice that?
I did. I thought the whole scene was really good. They crammed a lot of stuff, like you said, into this scene. One of the things I really did like is you saw C-3PO doing what he's meant to be doing. He was translating between different delegates.
Well, both of them are there, C-3PO and R2-D2, which I thought was cool. But yes, it was a couple of nice little groovy cameos there. That's the thing that a lot of people sort of forget. And it's hard because as the audience, we see the good guys and the bad guys. But there were definitely people, we saw a little bit in The Last Jedi, where not everybody is against the Empire. Some people are really for it. They really support it.
Remember, there are heroes on both sides.
That's a very good point, actually. Yes, and evil is everywhere. Love it. Good stuff. Dale has said that Alderaan is his favourite Star Wars location. You know what? Fair enough too. I mean, with like an image like that, it's absolutely fantastic. I mean, I look at the mountains as being like the Swiss Alps, and I think put a big ass city at the bottom of that. It'd be absolutely spectacular.
I was actually thinking if you wanted to go on holiday somewhere, Alderaan wouldn't be a bad destination, would it?
No, it would not. Before it gets blown up, not afterwards, because I have heard about the Alderaanian Jigsaw Puzzle Society. They're going to be in business for 100,000 years. See, DJ said, I really like this because it shows the fact that the galaxy hasn't gone fascist. It affects rich people. Yeah, well, that's exactly right. Everybody's in it for different reasons. And clearly, Bale is a very noble person. He wants to help everybody in the universe. We know about that, and of course, he joins the Alliance and whatever. Well, other people just say, no, I'm just looking after number one. And if the Empire's working for me, then yay, team.
The thing we've passed, which is exactly true, when the Inquisitor is asking about the Jedi, they go, the Empire doesn't have any, jurisdiction here. So it hasn't, you're right, it hasn't gone fascist. It hasn't expanded everywhere. And it's good. Well, like I said, there's a lot to work on in this area, in this era that we haven't seen before.
Yeah. And what's good about this series is we're seeing things and you're thinking, oh, this could ask questions about the future. What happens in the future? And one sequence in particular is when Leia's talking to the cousin. Right now, clearly she's already got latent force potential she's not aware of. But what becomes of the cousin? Because clearly he's got a carrot up his ass. What happens to him? And you can just imagine 30 years later, he's a part of the First Order or something. So, a major general in the First Order because he's really got this like snooty attitude. And I don't know who this guy, this character is meant to be, but you do wonder, you can make an entire story about him because clearly he thinks he's eaten a bit. And I really like that. I thought there was a lot going for that actually. So, a cowardly diplomat in the future who is trying to just line his own pockets just like his father is. So, what do you reckon?
Yep. Again, I thought this was a fantastic sequence. I thought the whole sequence was pretty cool. But you're right. I did wonder if he was an expanded universe character. I do remember a book somewhere or other where I read about Leia going to university and her cousin was there who was a couple of years older. But that's a distant memory. So I'm not sure if it was the same person or not.
Yeah, it's a good point. And I would have assumed she's got more than one cousin. But you do wonder where that guy would have ended up. And there's another character comes up later on and go, oh, I wonder what happens to them. So, and you are right. Yeah, it puts him in his place. Absolutely. Even though, it's the old size matters not scenario. She's short, he's tall, and you can tell he's just like, your history, sunshine. Don't mess with the Lady L. A couple of interesting shots that I just want to add in for because they just look really, really pretty. Once again, just love that sequence of the good old Coruscant. It was a contrast to the Coruscant landscape. So Coruscant, which is all industrial, and of course Alderaan is the exact opposite. And I just wanted to chuck that in because it looked really, really pretty. So it might look a bit digital, but whatever.
Well, that shot actually mirrors the Cloud City shot. Where they're standing on the balcony, which I thought must be a deliberate thing because it's an unusual setup. And the other shot I really loved was looking down on the streets where you saw all the cars going around. And it really reminded me also that sort of futuristic Jetson type future that people imagine. So I thought the whole of Alderaan was amazingly done.
Yeah. Colin says the cousin gets blown up 9 years later. Not necessarily. We don't know where he's from. They might be off world at the time. Depending on what happens 9 years later, someone might know somebody who says, yep, dudes, get off Alderaan. There's some bad shit going down. There's this big ass moon heading towards us. Let's get out of town now. So don't assume that he dies 9 years later. But I do wonder, you can make a fantastic story. No, it may not be fantastic, but an interesting story about that particular dude. So there you go. Question. Do you reckon that by the time episode 4 rolls around, Tatooine now has an Imperial garrison, or are the troopers that we said they're all deployed? No, there is an Imperial garrison there, and that's before the events of the Devastator and the Tantive 4. Okay, so that's already established. I think you could say even in the special edition, those stormtroopers that we see on Mos Eisley, they've been there for a while. They didn't just roll up yesterday. So yes, and that's the thing about this episode is showing that in Tatooine there are no stormtroopers. So between now and then, they turn up and the Empire says, okay, we're now going to have a presence here. And that's how that works. So, yeah, so very groovy. Two interesting pictures I just want to chuck in very, very quickly. Love this moment between Leia and Bale. And yes, unfortunately, he wants her to go to New University and become a senator and look after the planet and all the rest of it. And of course, clearly that's not going to happen.
Did you get...
Sorry. And I'm just going to cut you off. And there's still room for pinky swears in the galaxy far, far away. I thought that was very, very cool. But it was a wonderful moment. Really enjoyed it. Sorry, dude. Go for it.
Did you get the really foreboding comment in that scene where he says to her, "Everyone on Alderaan is going to look up to you."
Yeah. Good point.
And then they get blown to pieces.
So that's the idea. This is deliberately setting things up. So when you look at Alderaan and go, oh, this place is awesome, as like Dale mentioned earlier, and it's fantastic and whatever else. But of course, we know what happens to it. They just blow it up, and it's like, oh, dude, that's going to hit hard. So it's intentionally done that way, which I thought was really, really groovy. Yeah, you're right. Good to see Bale again, and it was important. It was played by Jimmy Spitz, nobody else. It has to be the same actor, and that just was wonderful. And you really did believe his sequences with Leia. Absolutely spectacular, and of course we know what happens to him, which is unfortunate. So very, very cool. Yes, so we're still plowing along now. Unfortunately though, there was a weak moment, and it was this sequence, right? So as a lot of people have pointed out, you got like a 10-year-old kid on the bolt, 3 adults chasing her, and they can't. I mean, she's a little bit inventive, slides down the hill and whatever else, but by the same token, it was a bit of a wussy sort of chase, so a bit unnecessary. But yeah, what do you reckon?
I was waiting for the Ewoks to jump out, but no, it did remind me a little bit of Caravan of Courage with Sindel running through the woods being chased by the bad guys in Battle for the Moon of Endor kind of thing. And you are right. It is one of those things that does annoy me, not just in this, but in a lot of movies and TV, how a kid that young can outrun adults. If you've had children, you know they can't. You're just faster than them. And also, these guys were particularly inept. Like, oh, look, there's a horizontal branch. Let me just run straight into it and knock myself out.
Yeah, it was one of those editing tropes where they're almost like the camera, like the character's right behind Leia, and then they show from a different angle, and she's like 500 miles ahead of them, and it's like, yeah, it was a bit of a punsy moment. But I know what they're trying to say, that she's resourceful, but yeah, it didn't. It looked a bit.
The other thing is, I did think the security on Alderaan isn't that great. Can you imagine one of the royal children that age running out of Buckingham Palace or something? It would not happen. You know? Yeah,
but I mean, they're working on the view that their planet is peaceful. There's no threats anywhere. So yeah, she's not going to be eaten by a Gorax or something like that. Daniel said that Leia's costume has shades of her best banana. Yes, it does in the color schemes. That's completely true. So it was kind of groovy. You are right, Christy. A lot of people said it was the weakest part of the sequence. Yep, totally agree with you on that one. Empire has no respect for someone unless you join them. Yeah, okay, we'll cover that off a bit later on, actually. And I like this, yeah, Benny Hill meets Kenobi. You put the Benny Hill music in for that particular sequence. And one of the cool things that did pop up for those people who are really into this stuff, and it's a bit nerdy, I know that, is you finally get to see a Fourleen. So it's their first live action appearance. And of course, for the Fourleen, they were introduced for Shadows of the Empire with Prince Sheezel on the left there. They then made an appearance in the Clone Wars for part of Black Sun on the right. But this is the first time we get to see the live action one. So it's just like a little bit of a woohoo, how good's that? So, yeah. As he said, untapped force speed. Yeah, it could be, but no, it didn't work that way. So there you go. But as was pointed out by a few people, she eventually does get stopped. And who does she get stopped by? Check him out. Yes. Don't try and flee, little girl, because he's a flea and he's like a chili pepper. He is red hot. So, yes. What do you reckon there for that, old son?
That was a character. That was a cameo by an actor. Well, an artist. I was totally surprised by, but it was fine because, you know, I sure they get asked by a lot of fans all the time. Oh, if you've got a part, can I be in it? I'm a massive Star Wars fan. Sometimes that jars when that happens. This was fine. I thought he was good as the character, and it was one of those things where it's like, oh, nice to see Flea doing something, you know.
Yeah, exactly right. I'll get to that. So you said it's not Shizor to the left. I'm referring to this guy here. I just took that image off the internet. I assume it's meant to be him. But either way, we still haven't seen Shizor himself. But either way, it's a live action Falleen. That was the point of the discussion. And for those
Yeah.
who didn't know who the Falleen were, Shizor was one of them. So yes, so I can't remember this dude's name. But yeah, so good old captures Leia, yay team, but yeah, it was kind of funny, and it was mentioned way up early in the conversation. Someone said, "Oh, who recognised him from the Red Hot Chili Peppers?" And yeah, it's good old Flea. So there you go. What do you reckon?
Yeah, no. So this was good, and I'm glad the chase scene wasn't more protracted than it actually was. And I did think they sent out more than one guard to get her, but only one got shot.
Yeah, exactly right. Alex has got a good one. Yes, Flea was born here, so which is true. So he could have said, "Yeah, g'day, Leia, how's it going?" But it wasn't to be. Very good stuff. Good. Now, so this then obviously brings in the conundrum of the story, which I don't think anybody predicted when the trailers first came out. Leia's getting kidnapped. We don't know why, and we don't know by who. But one thing we do know is that there's a fear of her being discovered. And after Bail and I can't pronounce the name, Brianna, put the phone call in, and Kenobi says, "Nah, I'm not going to take the gig." Bail makes his appearance in person, which I thought was kind of groovy. And of course, it's the key thing. She's Darth Vader's kid. They don't want anybody to find out. Ironically, after Return of the Jedi, the universe does find out that Leia was Dave Vader's kid, and that's the reason why she gets the ass out of the government and ends up having to form the resistance because her reputation is discredited. But at the time, they didn't know that. And of course, what are they going to do? Go to Kenobi and say, "Dude, help us. Ben Kenobi, you're our only hope."
Well, you know what they do to the next release special 4K edition? What? General Kenobi, years ago, you saved me when I was rescued and served my father during the Clone Wars.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you're right. And you can escape it later on when you're talking about continuity about what she says and who she remembers and all the rest of it. But we'll get to that point in a minute. And you are right, Grant. All the guards went in different directions. So once again, they weren't expecting her to be in a threat. It was just like she just nicked off. She does it all the time. It was no big deal. So this I thought was quite interesting. So good old Nara, the fact they showed this, I thought, oh, okay, so they're actually going to show the guy hanging up there. So good old Nari's been caught and plugged. But I thought, who told him? How did he get found out? Did someone dob him in? Or there was just luck of the draw that he was walking down the street and the Inquisitors were coming the other way, and that was that. But the fact that they sort of showed him hanging there, I thought, oh, okay, straight out of the medieval times.
I presume that was an intimidation thing because Obi-Wan had told him to go and hide in the desert, and he turns up back in town. And you don't see what actually happened, but I presume the Inquisitors hunted him down and then brought him back in town and strung him up as a warning to everyone else, toe the line.
Oh, yeah, I get that. I get that part. But how did they find him? I mean, because you remember when the Inkies were there earlier, the Inquisitors, they were saying if anybody doesn't spill the beans as to where this dude is, they're going to start killing dudes and cutting hands off and all sort of shit. So maybe someone said, yep, there he is right over there. I do wonder. So, and of course, in this particular shot, Kenobi's in town and he's standing right here. And of course, nobody knows that he's a Jedi. So it really enforces the fact that Kenobi's got to keep his trap shut and not tell anybody who he is, because if there is anti-Jedi sentiments or if people are shitting themselves thinking, oh, yeah, the Inquisitors are going to come back and do horrible things to us, they'll be going, there he is right there, kids. So,
I think he was written in the story to be written out in this way because Obi-Wan's changed so much and at such a low point, he has to have a lot of dominoes go down at the same time to put him in the right mindset to go and get Leia. So you've got the phone call, you've got Jimmy Smith turning up, you've got this guy dying, and you've got like Uncle Owen being braver than him and him being pretty useless. So
a very good point's just been brought up, and I didn't realize this. So DJ's asked about whether was it the Inquisitors or the locals got him because they had already left by then. That's a very good point. Wouldn't it be interesting if it was the locals who turned on him? So
yeah,
well, that's a very good one. I hadn't thought of that.
Maybe the pep talk. Maybe Owen is popular. Maybe the pep talk about turn in the Jedi or we'll kill his family worked, and they turn the Jedi in.
Yeah. So Rico's man had mentioned about the Inquisitors probably knew who they were looking for, but if they had flown off world, did they come back? You would assume they would have because they knew he was around. But it's a good point, and obviously we'll never know. Yeah, well spotted, old son. Can't say no to that. We go back. Deserts, good old burying sabers in the sand seems to be an ongoing trait because Rey does the same thing in Rise of Skywalker. So very cool. And as always, you've got to check the sabers. Are they the right ones? They look pretty groovy.
I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure there's a Filking song there, Sabres in the Sand to Strangers in the Night at some point.
You're an idiot. So there you go. And of course, he's in the middle of the desert. Lucky he remembers where they were. He could have walked out and go, I'm sure I left him here somewhere.
Well, he is apparently not using the Force to shroud that he's a Jedi, so he has a really good memory if he's not using the Force to find where the sabers were, doesn't he?
Yeah, it was pretty groovy stuff, wasn't it? So, and of course, as we find out at the end, as you do with holographic images, we also found out it was Reva is behind everything that's going on. And I thought, you can't criticize her initiative, but we are going to discuss her plan a bit later on, because in the interim, poor old the reluctant hero offered one last adventure, and before he gets, as I said, they're too old for this sort of thing, and whether he likes it or not, he's going off world, and yay team. So there you go.
Yeah. So, what did you think of the episode as a whole?
I really enjoyed it, actually. And with that in mind, before I give you my point, now, Christy's still watching this. Now, for those who've never watched our reviews before, we have what we call the Christy's Crimson Yawns. And the idea is that the less yawn she gives us, the better she thought the episode was. So it's in reverse. So if she gives us 9 yawns, she hated it, right? She gives us 2 yawns, she loves it. So, Christy, while you're out there, can you give us your yawns, please, while we talk about that particular episode before we move on to episode 2? Now, I loved it. I thought it was really, really good. It really worked, aside from the chase sequence in Alderaan, which is a bit wanky, but the characterization of Kenobi is really well thought out. And it was I don't know, worked for me. I had no problems with it. I think it's probably the best series that they've produced of all the series, and I mean that legitimately. Even Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett, it worked for me. I was really dialed into it.
As an opening episode, as a debut episode for me, out of every series they've done, it was the strongest one for me as well. So I totally agree with you on that. Very strong.
Yeah, exactly. And I like the fact that Kenobi wasn't the suddenly jump in hero. He was the reluctant hero. He did not want to do what he had to do. And I really dialed into that. Christy said 2.5 out of 5. I have no idea what that's meant to be out of 10, because it's meant to be out of 10. So I'm just going to give you a 3 at the moment, unless you want to readjust that, Christy. So yes, we did this out of 10. So there you go.
There you go.
Which is a good score.
So that was still a pretty good score from Christy.
Yep, absolutely. If I was giving it out of 10, like realistically out of 10, I'd say in the 8.5 to 9. It was, there's very little I could fault with it.
Actually say the same thing, 8.5 to 9. You don't want to go too hard too fast, because if there's one that's a couple of notches higher, you have to give it a Spinal Tap 11 out of 10.
Yeah. So there you go. Very good stuff. All right. So Daniel said he liked the first episode. The Mandalorian was stronger, but no, I don't think it was stronger. I think it was just a lot slower, actually. The Mandalorian, it looked good. It was different, but this had a lot of characterization and story going with it, which was outstandingly good. Very good. Okay. Anything you want to say before we move on to the second episode?
Let me ask you this question. If this had been one episode and they'd ended the episode here and you had to wait another week to see episode 2, do you think the episode would have been better, worse, or just exactly the same?
No, I think it still would have been reviewed very, very highly, actually. But you are right. It has set a high bar very quickly.
Yeah.
And now the fact that Kenobi's going off world, it's all open slather. What's going to happen now? Obviously, he's going to rescue Leia. We know that one. What's going to happen in the interim? And I don't know. It was good that they've had the 2 episodes released, so people could sort of get their fix at the same time. I think it was a very smart move on Disney's behalf. All right, where are we? What happy about is this show uniformity of vision? Yep, it's got the one director of the whole series. Yes, that's definitely a good point. And you are right. It's going to have a nice flow of content.
I'll tell you what. Sorry. I'll tell you what. I totally agree with that. You cannot imagine in this series that the Mod Squad are going to turn up at some point. They're not going to do that in this series.
Yeah, no, totally agree with you on that one. And it has consistency, and the fact that it's in parts rather than chapters, I think is kind of cool. That's why I said at the end you could probably edit the whole thing together in one movie, and it'd be an absolute success. But we move on. Now, there were some points brought up by people early in the conversation. I didn't reference them because they're coming up in this episode here. So let us move on. Our part 2 review and scene breakdown. Okay, now we're off Tatooine. We have no idea what to expect. And we're off and running. And, of course, we end up with the galaxy far, far away version of LAX. And I thought, what are those dudes? What are they meant to be? What's the deal with that?
Yeah, what I really liked and what I was saying, I thought it worked better dropping 2 episodes at once, because the episodes really contrast against each other. And you can see straight away from this episode, you're doing a jump to another planet. The tone's different. Even though it's a holistic story, I thought it was a good move to have the 2 episodes back to back.
Yeah, very, very cool. Now, yeah, giant parasites. Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, they're the Disney executives. Oh, I shouldn't say that. Bad Dags. All right. So we're on Dayu, brand new planet we haven't been to before. Look at that nightlife. It's just like being in Tokyo, isn't it? And I don't know if this is true. I just pure speculation, but I do wonder if the design for Dayu and the way it looks was inspired by the unreleased Star Wars Underworld and the 1313 games from about 15 or 12 years ago, because the designs look very, very similar. About all the bright nightlife, and there's still got a seedy underside to it, and the fact that there's gambling in both this episode and in Tatooine, with the dice and all the rest of it. It was just an observation. I don't know if it's intentional or not, but
Well,
I mean, like a lot of things, you first look at Dayu and you go, "Oh wow, that looks really, really cool." But of course, when you get to ground level, it's quite scummy. So just an observation. So there you go.
I think you're absolutely spot on, because a lot of those scenes look like they're out of the episode 2, the art of episode 2, and they're unused Doug Chang production art as well from the streets of Coruscant. So I thought it was really good, because this actually looked bigger than the streets of Coruscant in episode 2, because they sort of go down one street and run into a club. And this is almost like a Blade Runner environment where you're seeing nightclubs, but you're seeing the seedy streets and street vendors and things like that. So I was really impressed with this world building as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that one. So we're talking about those wormy things we saw earlier. Good old Adzi's come up with on hut droppings. Yeah, good on you. Hut droppings that walk around by themselves. Episode stand by itself. I'm not sure why they doubled up episode 1 or 2. Streaming service. I'm actually, neither do I. Why they did both of them together. Maybe they wanted to ensure the audience was so encapsulated, because the end of this episode is a bit of a big deal.
Yeah,
it's to make sure that people come back for episode 3. I didn't notice this one, Christy. Yeah, power lines. You see all the power lines everywhere. I assume they are power lines, or they could be washing lines. How people used to hang washing between buildings. Don't know. But it's a good observation. So there you go. Yes, it looks like underground scenes from Clone Wars. Yeah, it does have that Coruscant thing, but I, as I said, inspired by Tokyo as far as I'm concerned, and very, very groovy. But when you get to ground level, it's not that pretty after all. Flashing lights don't mean anything. It's not like Las Vegas. It's actually the complete opposite.
Yeah.
One of the things that we see, one of the cool moments, it was mentioned by Alex way up earlier, but he jumped the gun way too far ahead of the game, was the fact that Tamira's back as a clone. And it's like, how's this sequence come into the scheme of things? It's the first thing I noticed, because of his age, the growth accelerants are still aging and working, because he looks a shitload older now than he did 10 years prior. The other thing is, obviously, did he recognize Kenobi? If he did, how come the inhibitor chip didn't do anything? Maybe it's a malfunction, or he's just given up. But the fact that he's now a hobo, as in like this clone is a hobo and no one cares about them, and it's almost emulating actual war veterans who come back from war, whether it be Vietnam or over in, where'd they go to? Afghanistan, thank you. And they just can't reintegrate back into normal society. But I thought this was a really, really good moment.
I did too. When he came up and looked at it and summed him up, it was kind of one of those character moments where nothing is really said by him, but you understand what he's thinking and feeling. It's they did that a lot. I really liked in this. They did a lot of show not tell when it came to the story and development of the characters.
Yeah, because clearly with the clone, whoever it happens to be, it's obviously not Rex. It was a case of like, you served your purpose. Now 10 years later, no one wants to know anything about you. You're long. He's still got the armor and everything, and he's just forgotten. And you can just imagine even the stormtroopers who are now normal conscripts just like laughing at him, and it's just like, it's almost heartbreaking. But that emulates real life, what happens today. So
the thing is, in the Bad Batch, they're already going down the way of giving the clones the arse, and you really can see that these people were bred for war. And once they aren't doing that, they haven't got a place in society.
Yeah, totally agree. I can't believe people are still talking about the worm things we saw earlier. Daniel said they're aliens from the Shai Hulud's kids. They're the sandworms from June. You get from that. And yes, he's still part of the 501st. That's correct. And it's correct. Okay, because of the markings. And so you would have thought he would have recognized Kenobi, but maybe his brains are all scrambled, and that's into that. So, and it was intentional. It was absolutely intentional. And the fact they got Tamira Morrison back to do it, and someone had suggested maybe he was filming Boba Fett next door, and they just brought him in and said, "Can you just do this one bit for us?" That's how they did it. And you are right. Yeah, loved it. And of course, what happened to them? And of course, we always suspected that once the Clone Wars finished, that all the clones, was, as you said, was just given the flick. But where did they end up? And of course, they would have gone in different places, and some of them it did not end well. All of them effectively didn't end well. So there you go. That's what we're saying, Adzi, about Obi-Wan being recognised. And I think he realised straight away, no, he hasn't been recognised. So because all the clones look the same. Speaking of being recognised, I thought this was a nice little gag. I don't know if you picked up on this one at all. So the character is called Tetha Grigg. So she offered Kenobi all the drugs except death sticks. I'm like, want to buy some death sticks? And of course, Kenobi says he's looking for his daughter. And of course, she is Ewan McGregor's daughter. So how good's that?
Yeah, that was pretty cool. So they've got like the whole family with his uncle being Biggs, was it?
Yes, Dennis Lawson, yes.
Yeah. So you've got like that sort of next generation coming through as well. That said, there is a lot of nepotism in Star Wars where often you'll get like different cast in this case, but different executive producers, kids are in the background and stuff like that. But this was a cool little cameo.
So when Kenobi says to her, I'm looking for my daughter, this lady, he could have just said, hey, I'm standing right in front of you, dude, with your blind or something. That would have made for a nice outtake.
Yes.
In universe, I like the idea that spice actually now comes from different places. So we still, as we've discussed in previous episodes, not 100% sure what spice is or what it does, but clearly it is a narcotic. And the fact that and she says, oh, I got this, I got this, I got this. And I was like, oh, okay, it was kind of groovy. So, that was cool. Love it. Did you say, Wedge, not Biggs? Yeah, did you say Biggs, did you? Oh,
I think it was Biggs, yeah.
Yeah. Too much in his mind. It's all very, very good. But yes, so the spice, it's still out there doing its thing. Now, one thing that is doing its thing is the fact that scammers, how grouse was this? He's got the magnets in the arms and he's making stuff happen. I thought this was really good because it would happen in real life.
It would for sure.
Go on, how can I make a few bucks out of it? And this is what you do. What do you reckon?
The only thing that I worry about for him is what about when the Inquisitors turn up?
Well, obviously they're going to realize he's fake and just not worry about it, right? So it's like, dude, you're pulling a chain. He could just say, like, it was only a joke, and I'm not really Jesus Christ reincarnated, and they just go, you know what? Who cares? Yeah. They're only caring about the real thing. So yes. But it was a nice sequence, and the fact that he's trying to do the whole, I've got the mind control thing going on with the dude on the radio.
Well, the thing that I think shows great restraint and why this series is so good, they've got the comedy in it, but the comedy is part of the story through the situations and the characters that are there. So you haven't got the Eope farting in someone's face. Like, it's actually good part of the story where there's humorous moments in it because of the situation, and it's not forced. And that's why I was really impressed by the writing and direction of this.
What also worked, I forgot the character's name, Hari, I think it is, or something like that, Heifer or something. He was scamming them, but he was actually trying to help them at the same time. It wasn't like real life scammers where it's like, we'll take the money off you and we don't give a shit what happens to you. He was actually trying to help them escape. And I thought that was an interesting sort of like byline to that, which is particularly
like great, powerful Oz, where he pretends to be a magician, but he's just helping people realize their own potential.
True. Now, the key thing is, remember earlier we talked about the cousin, right? Like, okay, the cousin, what happens to him in the future? The other thing that came up was this kid, because he's made a point of saying the kid is apparently force sensitive because he says, he's got to be hidden and all the rest of it. You do wonder in the future, where does this kid end up? And maybe he may not end up anywhere. But once again, like the cousin, you could write a really good story about this dude in saying, oh, yeah, I was a little kid stuck on Dayu. I was able to get off the planet. I've now become some great something. He could become a Knights of Ren. You just don't know. And I really liked it. You could just speculate till the cows come home. What happens to this dude?
I know what happens to him. He ends up sweeping the stables on Canto Bight.
Yeah, what? And he doesn't age in that entire time. Yeah, good on you. That's like 30-something years.
No. I'm just saying that's where they all wind up. That's why they've got the little rebel rings on them.
Oh, yeah, good on you. So, the kid ends up in Canto Bight, and he's like, it's 40 years later, and he's still like, and he hasn't changed at all. I love it. Very good. And you are right. Yes, they're heading to Corellia. And as someone once said, who wants to go to Corellia? That's a bloody shithole. But we only got to see one part of Corellia. Maybe there could be a part that's not so bad. So I like the theories he's Corin Horn. Yeah, well, who knows? Maybe it could be. You just never know. Good stuff. Thought that the line that he was forced since he was part of the scam. No, the kid has some power, right? And we're working on the view that that's legitimate. That's why they're trying to get off world for whatever reason. That's how I interpret it anyway. So, yes.
do you think, I guess this comes up a bit later, do you think he's genuinely trying to help Obi-Wan and Leia, or do you think he is sending them as the Inquisitors to pick up?
Oh, I don't know. I thought he was legitimate, actually, because he could have easily, when he meets up with Reva later on, just say they're over there rather than trying to scam his way through it. So I think he was legitimate. Was that he didn't say I'd do anything? He's a Knights of Ren. Very good point. The Knights of Ren were pretty useless, but yes, I do like that. And as he said, that Beck thought the scene was so corny she couldn't watch, but that's what makes it work. It was a corny scene, and I mean, Kenobi's watching him thinking this is just completely shifty as he's doing the whole. I thought it was great. It's something we've never seen before, because the Jedi are now gone. People trying to make money off the fact that they used to exist, but they don't exist. Loved it. Christy, didn't work for you. Cringed through the sequence. Yeah, fair enough then. Good stuff. In the credits, his name is listed as Corin. Okay, well, maybe he is then, Corin Horn. So there you go. It could be nicely canonized. Very, very cool. All right, so the other thing that comes up is we discover that good old Kenobi has become uncivilized. How about that? Whipping out the old pistol. What's the deal with that?
Well, everyone knows how Obi-Wan didn't like them, so the best way for him not to be like Obi-Wan is to have one.
Yeah, exactly right. So, yeah.
Oh, the other thing I was going to ask you, you'd know this. He insists, I'm not Obi-Wan Kenobi, I'm Ben Kenobi. Is this the earliest in the timeline that we've heard Ben Kenobi? He never used it in the prequels. Did he use it in the cartoons?
It has never been used. Ben, this is the first time Ben's been used. He's always been known as Obi-Wan. Now, whether his birth name is Ben or whether he's just invented it and pulled it out of fresh air, I don't know. Nothing's ever been covered off, but he's always been known as Obi-Wan. So Ben, like when you hear it in A New Hope and go, oh, okay, that's completely left field. Where did that come from? And somewhere here he's decided to use that name. Obviously, he has to create a new name for himself, so he's not identified by anybody. But whether it's something he buried away or whether he just pulled it out of fresh air, I don't know. So.
He could have changed his last name too.
Oh, yeah, well, that's true. Yeah, you do wonder, if you're in hiding and what does your passport say and all that, you'd think there's a way of tracking these people, but
we're looking for Obi-Wan Kenobi. Oh, you're just Ben Kenobi. Move along. You're not the Ben we're looking for.
That's the advantage of being on Tatooine. No one's really checking. Had Luke been stuck on Coruscant, he probably would have had no hope of getting away and staying in hiding. I like this one from Gavin. Yeah, they're not the Knights of Ren, they're the Knights of Ni. Yeah, very, very cool. Okay, what? Fake was a character template from the old WEG D6 game role-playing game. It probably is intentional. They do tend to sort of borrow from all previous references, and that's why a lot of fans really enjoy them. So good stuff. He wanted to see how uncivilized felt. Yeah, we certainly wasn't doing it by choice. Yes, good stuff. All right, so once we do get to see what I think is like a processing of spice. If it has a cinnamon flavor to it, then we know what that is. But which is particularly groovy, and it does use the Force here for the first time to blow up the blue thing to cause the alarms to go off, which I thought was kind of groovy. So he's finally getting back in the swing of things, and we get to see a Zabrak, the dude on the right hand side there. So doesn't have as many face tattoos as Darth Maul or Savage, but I thought, well, there you go. Could have been a long lost cousin for all we know. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I thought this sequence was good. It was kind of the Breaking Bad drug production thing, which I didn't know if Disney would go there with spice. It was always sort of a mystery as to what it was and what it did as a drug. And so maybe you'll get some more explanation in this, or it might just be an aside that we see just in this episode. But obviously, the people they're dealing with Leia are part of the criminal underworld, not just kidnappers. They're drug dealers and all those kind of nasty underbelly type things.
Yeah, exactly right. Who do you go to when you need stuff done? You go to these people. I thought this was interesting. Good old Kenobi kicks the crap out of these two dudes. And I thought, hang on, he didn't actually have to use a lot of hand-to-hand combat back in his Clone Wars days. He's still pretty sprightly for an old fella. Who knew that he was able to defend himself in hand-to-hand combat? So I thought, oh, okay, look at that.
I think we have seen from many, many previous movies, if you knew and used hand-to-hand combat, even if you haven't done it for 10, 20 years, it comes back instantly.
Yeah, well, the fact that he beat the Zabrak up, and Daniel made a point of saying he's an Iridonian Zabrak, I thought, okay, he's probably pushing the friendship a little bit, but by the same token, maybe the two hench beings weren't really expecting it to happen, so caught them by surprise. I don't know. But anyway, good old Kenobi. And I like the fact that when Kenobi does get caught, the flea dude says, mate, you're a complete knob. You've just walked straight into a trap. How could you not see it a mile away? And that's the classic thing. That's a classic movie trope where someone gets caught. You go, how could you not notice this? It is a complete setup, clearly, to get you, and we've got you. How freaking stupid are you? I thought that was actually very, very clever.
Yeah. So yeah, a good sequence. I thought it was.
Well, as it turned out, the spice that he got from his daughter earlier, the real daughter, I do like this. Well, everybody bleeds. I thought that was a sort of interesting sort of quote. And the dust is red as well, which I thought was kind of cool. And of course, he makes his escape. And I thought this was a really well thought out, clever escape. It wasn't a case of just going, oh, look, what's that over there? And they all turn around and he just... and of course, they all get high on the drugs because he's wearing a gas mask. I thought that was really well thought out.
This is the first time we've seen the effects of spice. It would have been really cool if you'd seen their eyes and they're all glowing blue.
Yeah, they're going to glow blue. Yeah, exactly right. So they got this. They could expand consciousness and suddenly they're into space travel. So absolutely love it. And you're right. Yeah, got caught in the ray shields as well. So very good stuff. Now this is interesting, right? So the Grand Inky, catches up with Reva. And Reva says, oh, there's a link between Bale and Kenobi in the archives. Now, of course, Bale and Kenobi had nothing to do with each other all through the Clone Wars and hardly anything to do with each other in Revenge of the Sith. So there must be something that happened off screen that made them have a connection that is in some archive somewhere that allowed Reva to sort of figure it out. So this is probably, from a continuity perspective, a bit of a weak link. Did you pick up on that?
Well, I was presuming it was from the Jedi archives because, they wouldn't call them the Jedi archives anymore because they've annexed the whole temple and probably raided it and stuff. Yeah, I didn't think immediately that would be a link that anyone would pick up on because it wasn't like they hung out apart from the last scene in Revenge of the Sith kind of thing. That was it, wasn't it?
Yeah, and of course, if you're referring to the Jedi archives, of course, at that point, there were no Jedi archives. So this obviously must have occurred beforehand where Bale and Kenobi have been hanging out together, playing, chess or something on the weekends or table tennis or whatever, and we didn't see it on screen, and they've got a friendship or something. So, yeah, that was probably about an error in the storytelling, unless it's something we haven't found out yet. I mean, it could have happened off screen, which is completely okay.
Do you know what? It would have been more accurate if they just tapped his phone records because, they're going, the Alderaan has called Tatooine, and it looks like Bale has called like an unknown person on Tatooine kind of thing because, he still has him on speed dial after all these years.
Yeah, exactly right. And it was nice that it was the same communication device that he used as well. Now, this is interesting. We finally get to learn a little bit about Reva's backstory. She came from the gutter. And you do realize that if a youngling, a Force-sensitive user, is picked up by the Jedi as a little kid, right, taken to the Jedi Temple, or they spend their entire lives in the Jedi Temple, if they were cut loose after the Jedi Purge, they would be completely lost. They'd be lost. They'd be confused. They'd have no ability to look after themselves, no sensibilities. And no wonder that they could then be recruited by the dark side of the Force. And I thought that was actually a very, very interesting point that, so that would make sense. She's just a little kid who's lost and confused, and someone's grabbed her and said, all right, come with us.
Yeah.
Down in the gutter. Yeah.
Yeah, you do wonder if you will see more of what happened to the younglings between the Order 66 and what's happening now. I imagine that the dark side is more take what exists and corrupt it rather than train it from scratch kind of thing. And you would get a resentment of dark force users between Jedi. So it is a sort of, a bit of ambivalence would be the we need them, but we don't like them kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we're going to be discussing that a little bit later on because there's actually a bit more to come with it, but it would explain why Reva was completely lost and confused and she gets recruited accordingly. As to her beef with Kenobi, we still don't know what that is. You're applying too much real-world logic to Magic Space Wizards, Charles. There you go. Nothing worse than real-world logic.
Yes.
Okay, so good gag, of course. Reva wants to find Kenobi. How do you do that? You introduce the John Wick moment. Okay, everybody's now out and about, running out, looking for him. So I thought that was a nice little thing. And if you did pick up on this earlier, you got all this gambling occurring here on Deo. And of course, we saw exactly the same thing on Tatooine. So gambling across the galaxy is like prostitution, is the one thing you can always guarantee on is going to be there, which I thought was kind of cool.
Well, there was the same scene in The Mandalorian with the pucks all lighting up for the Mandalorian as well. So
yeah, and of course we saw an Attack of the Clones and all the rest of it. So yeah, very cool. Okay, so Leia learns Ben's name, which of course is actually quite poignant because she's obviously going to name her kid Ben when the time comes, even though she doesn't know it now. And of course, Kenobi asks us the stupidest question of all time: "How old are you?" And it's like, dude, you were there when she was born.
Yeah. So I guess it's one of those things where it would be awkward, introducing to a little kid and getting her to trust you. And I guess it was more like chit chat rather than him actually wanting the information. That's how I got it, to sort of break the ice.
Yeah. So not knowing how this is going to pursue. So she knows him as Ben Kenobi, not Obi-Wan Kenobi, right?
Yeah.
So in A New Hope, when she says, General Kenobi, years ago, you helped my father in the Clone Wars, right? She knew him then as Obi-Wan and may have assumed he was somebody else. But on the Death Star, she specifically says Ben Kenobi. Well, Luke says it to her, I'm here with Ben Kenobi. Oh, Ben Kenobi, where is he? So she connects with him as Ben Kenobi, not as Obi-Wan Kenobi. I mean, it's semantics, but it's an interesting sort of observation. So why she might say Obi-Wan, I don't know who that is, but I know who Ben is. I don't know, just a thought. So there you go. I like this one. Yes, to have perfect logic is illogical. Yes, very, very cool. Okay, yes, the cool poncho, coat poncho, one at the Endor one. Yeah, that's right. She goes to buy the green thing. It's like, another 15 something years from now, you'll be wearing one of these on a moon of Endor.
And the mittens. So she's got her mum's love of a big wardrobe.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, exactly right. Yes, I like to buy a lot of stuff, particularly groovy. Isn't it General Kenobi? Now, in the holographic message, she says, General Kenobi, years ago, you served my father in the Clone Wars. She doesn't refer to him as Ben in that message, right? Because obviously Luke finds it and doesn't know who. Obi-Wan, one of you means old Ben Kenobi. But she knows who Ben is when she hears the name of the Death Star when she's being rescued. Oh, nerd. This one, 2 interesting points, right? It's a blurry picture. Sorry about that. She was running, right? I thought straight away, you look at those things in the fish tanks, and you go, it's not your usual pet warehouse. But one thing that has come up, and I have picked up on this myself, is that some people are being concerned about whether Star Wars series are becoming too child-focused. And this could be a Disney thing, right? So obviously, Mandalorian, the Book of Boba Fett, Grogu is a child, even though at 50 years old, he's still a kid. Is the central character. In the Bad Batch, Omega is a child, and she's the central character. And now Leia, who's a child, is the central character. And some people have thought, is this becoming the gag? The reluctant hero having to look after the kid. And all three of them effectively follow, all three shows follow the same pattern. And that could be something that maybe ruffles the feathers for a few fans a little bit. What do you reckon?
I think the Book of Boba Fett less so. It's more the episodes that were the Mandalorian crowbarred in had it.
Yep.
It is one of those things that I guess you can go either way. If you love the Skywalker saga, you're going to love seeing Leia. And I tell you what, they could have done this really horrible and cringeworthy, but I think they did it well, so I'm not complaining about it.
Yeah, it's in fact, I'm not being critical. It's just an observation, thinking, okay, is the focus for future series. So whatever comes out next, which is Andor later this year, is Andor going to be looking after a little kid as well? So it was just a pattern that seems to have just popped up in the past couple of years, and I thought it was a very interesting sort of pickup.
Yeah.
Gavin said, Michael Jackson knew Ben. Yes, and that dirty rat. What can I say? Very, very cool. Now, this is kind of, once again, beautiful imagery in the series, right? And we know they're using the volume. It's all great and wonderful. But I thought, look, that's like a Batman moment. I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. And you do wonder, it's obviously dark, and you think, okay, is there like a dome over this entire city, or is it just really, really bad pollution? So I thought it was grouse.
So I thought this was amazing too. A lot of it reminded me of Blade Runner imagery. I didn't think of Batman, but you saying that there, I can see it. I did like when she was on the rooftops and she was sort of had done the Batman thing where she set events in motion and then she could monitor to see where he was because of what she had done and hoped would happen. I did think there was something about that was a closed planet, and I thought that's why the skies were dark or something. They couldn't communicate or something. I'm not 100% sure on that.
No.
But,
But no, it did look really, really cool. Good stuff. The setting up for future characters. Well, that's exactly right. It could be too. But if you sit and analyze, Mandalorian, Bad Batch, and this show, they all have something very, very similar going all three of them. The kid and the fact that people have to look after the kid when they don't want to look after a kid. Very, very important to realize that. So there you go. Is that a dome over your city? No, please see me exactly right. Very, very cool. Yes. Okay. Now I thought this was once again beautiful imagery, but I thought, how lucky is it that the fight takes place on the rooftop? Because if it was down on the ground or underground, she'd be going, where is everybody?
Well, we don't know if this is like Coruscant, where the whole planet is a city, or we don't know if this is maybe like Melbourne, and if you got on top of one of the big buildings, you could see all the rooftops around.
Yep. Now, you would have been like me when this cup popped up. You go, oh, gosh, straight back to The Empire Strikes Back. It's Forlom. But it's not. Sorry, kids. One Jack. What kind of name is that? One Jack.
Well, I didn't think it was Forlom. I'd seen beforehand. One of the things I was spoiled by was, it's Forlom. He's in the trailer. I always thought it looked more like a Death Star droid with green eyes than Forlom, but it is something totally different. I don't know if we've seen that droid exactly before.
Yeah, well, exactly right. And as it turned out, it didn't end well for him either. So
I was more upset about the alligator man. I thought he looked really cool.
he was an idiot. He stood on the thing out in the open.
I know.
Like, you heard a cover, and he's sitting there going plang, 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 and he gets plugged. And it's like, mate, you deserve to go, man. That's the Darwin Award if ever there was one. So there you go. Anyway, so good old Leia falls off the building or jumps off. And poor old Ben has got to finally reach out with the Force. And he's clearly out of practice, which is particularly groovy. But the cool thing is that it's another happy landing.
Oh, they should have said that. I was thinking the same thing, actually. So that was very cool.
Yeah, very good stuff. And of course, she says, "Oh, you are a Jedi." So yes, the cat is out of the bag now, as it were. And of course, somewhere in his travels, like when Leia's speaking, he says that he reminds Kenobi of somebody he used to know, a woman. And of course, it's obvious it's Padme, right? But some fans have actually thought it was Satine. Now, if you've never watched the Clone Wars animated series, you'll have no idea who she is. But Kenobi was actually very, very close to her. She was the Duchess of Mandalore. Yeah, it's meant to be Padme. And of course, he can't say, "Oh, it was your mother," because that would just open up a massive can of worms. But
the other thing I wish they'd put in the first episode was maybe her being athletic and jumping between trees. Because I can tell you, as a parent, little kids are really afraid of heights, and I cannot imagine a kid that age, unless she was a gymnast or been trained that way, jumping off a building like that. I did think that was a little bit unrealistic.
Yeah, there was a little bit of that, and Chrissy's made a point about the cringy chase. You are right. I mean, there were sequences where, like, she's hit the deck, and then Obi-Wan's suddenly on the ground level. It's like, how did he get down there? Anyway, so a little bit of like cutting a few corners to get through the thing very, very quickly. So, and Ads has said that too. So, fair call. If she is force powerful, she could just jump over. This is in Reva, could just jump over the roofs. But
what would have been more realistic for a kid is for her to take a run up, realize it was a big gap, and stop, and then stumble over by accident, and then have him save her.
Well, one thing's for sure, we know for a fact that when Leia was falling, she ain't going to die. So she's going to get saved. Whether it be Kenobi saving her with the Force, or like a truck pulls up with carrying all these mattresses in the back and she lands into that. It was all good, Leia. You got nothing to worry about. So, yes. Okay, Hajar, that was the character's name. I can never remember this dude's name. So, and I like the fact he is actually, as we said earlier, he's prepared to sort of help Kenobi out and tell him, okay, this is your ship, you jump on here, there, and everything else. And I did wonder if he's going to become a member of the Church of the Force. And if people don't know what that is, it's the dudes who support the Jedi, and they exist primarily in The Force Awakens. That's actually the start, the sequence where Kylo Ren goes and executes all these people. They're actually from the Church of the Force. They're not Force sensitive themselves, but they support the Jedi, even though the Jedi don't exist. So they're effectively the groupies, if you will. And it was just a question I'd sort of put out there. So
I did, like I brought up, I did wonder when, I don't know if it was his son or someone else in the gang came up and go, well, that's really stupid. We had him here earlier. Now we've got to sort of find him again. I did wonder.
He said it was embarrassing. And I thought that was very, very clever. He was there the whole time. It was like, And of course, then you assume, he's going to go and try and cash in on the bounty. And of course, he doesn't. I thought that was a nice twist, actually. So, so it looks like Reva can pull information out of the mind of a dude. And of course, I thought about this afterwards. I thought, well, hang on, did Vader try this on Leia and the Death Star when she was being interrogated? Sure, they had the mind probe and all the rest of it, but I mean, Leia would have resisted, obviously, and she's got a little bit of Force sensitivity, but
I think in the script, and it's cut out, I don't know if they filmed it or it's a previous script, but they do say in one of the versions of the script that she's a royalty of Alderaan, and she's been trained in the, I think, she can avoid having her mind read. She's been trained part of the royal training.
Yep, no, makes sense to me too. So there you go. And obviously, she's got the resistance to the mind probe, so she's obviously pretty strong in the head. All right, so this comes up to the question that you asked earlier, right? It's mentioned here. Ben says, many Jedi would turn to the dark side. And of course, the question is, why would they do that? Right? Now, first, they've got to survive Order 66. So let's assume they're not in the Jedi Temple. They're somewhere else around the universe, right? Whether they be with their clone troopers or whatever else. But why would they change to the dark side? Okay, now we work on the view that Reva was a youngling taken in by the Inquisitors and has become dark from that. But if you're a Jedi Knight who was in the, I'm a good guy, but now the good guys have lost, it's not clear as to why they would jump ship over to the dark side, or whether they just go, well, I'm really shitty about the fact that the Jedi being killed off. Bank, I've just crossed over. I do wonder about that. I thought it's a very good philosophical discussion to have another day. What do you think, old son?
Yeah, it is one of those things. I guess if you're really come up to the choice, you can stick up for your ideals, or you're going to die, 100% die. Some people might just go, okay, well, this is the only way I can get out of this.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a long discussion to be had based on what limited information we have. Why would a Jedi who's been trained to be the good side of the Force suddenly switch to the dark side just because their temple's been destroyed? And that's the only thing I can think of.
To save Padme.
What?
to save Padme.
What, all now? We're talking about the ones who hang on. No, we're talking about like just general Jedi out in the universe, not like
I know, but everyone would have a Padme in their life or something like that.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah,
it could be more subtle, change or die. I mean, I can only assume that they had the rage took over the fact that the whole temple had been destroyed, and that was it. Their trip down the dark side it took place. But the fact they're turning against the Jedi and hunting their own, I don't know. Yeah. It's an interesting sort of discussion. I mean, I always worked on the view that the Inquisitors were Dark Force users from the beginning, not Jedi who got switched over to the dark side. So I don't know. It's a big discussion there. So if Anakin turned, why is it such a big stretch? Yeah, I suppose. So anyway, not to worry. So there were good guys who turned into bad guys hunting their own. Oh, there you go. Very, very cool. But don't forget, Anakin had a motivation. He was trying to kill all of them because he wanted to save Padme, as you said, funnily enough. Good stuff. Now, here we go. Okay, so the Inky, the Grand Inky, he's got his spinning saber. Now, of course, you would know this. And, of course, it's the stupidest bloody lightsaber in the universe. But ironically, it was actually designed as a concept toy for General Grievous. How about that? For Attack of the Clones.
It is interesting. I do wonder if you'll see any of the Inquisitors flying around using their lightsabers like helicopters in this. Probably not.
Yeah, true. So I assume you knew that, didn't you?
Yes, and also they've just announced at this Star Wars celebration that HasLabs are making a replica of this as well.
Yeah. So for those who don't know, when General Grievous is spinning his sabers in Revenge of the Sith, they said, how can we do that as a toy? We physically can't get the thing to spin. Oh, we'll just hold on to the clamp and it spins around by itself. And, of course, they said, that's awesome. Stick that in Rebels. You go, well, what's the point of having these holding and the thing spinning around? How freaking dorky is that? But, yeah, you're right. Swing. So, yes.
Well, now you know why. It's to turn a flea into sushi.
Yes, exactly. Well, it does, doesn't it? So one red hot chili pepper to go, if you don't mind, umpire. All right, here's one for you both. Out of all new characters developed by Disney, would you like to see the opportunity? Which one would you like to see? Hang on, which would you like to be? Obviously not Flea because it doesn't end well for him. I don't know. Be the cleaner. They seem to sort of just like live a happy life and nobody even knows about it. But we'll get back to that later on. We're almost at the end of the discussion here. All right, so it was brought up right at the start of the show, right? The Grand Inky cops it in the guts, right? Gets the old Qui-Gon treatment. Now, of course, he's got to survive because he's got to end up in Rebels. But as has been pointed out, maybe this is a way to get him out of the picture for a while. So Reva, the third sister, can go and do her thing chasing Kenobi while the Grand Inky is, doing his flesh wound and getting himself fixed up. So, but yeah, he can't die because that means they're contradicting their own continuity. And with Lucasfilm, that makes no sense at all. So there you go.
And he went into a back to tank for the next 4 episodes.
I like the fact you call him Inky as well. But fan on the streets, not from the Temple Jedi's no longer around. Well, that's right. That's what we said. Yeah, they've ended up on the streets and they go, you know what? I've never been on my own ever in my entire life. My entire social structure of having a family, if you will, and mentors and masters is all gone out the window. What do I do? And of course, they would all have to survive in their own way. And clearly that's how Reva was found. Are we positive they are the same characters? Yes, we are. So the Grand Inky is the Inky, and the fifth brother is the fifth brother. That is confirmed. So, yes, good stuff. Somebody did say, though, that if this Grand Inky dies, maybe his twin brother, who's also from Utapau, looks identical to him, pops up and also becomes a Grand Inky. So there you go.
You never know.
All right. Where are we? We got to cut into the biggest story of the whole lot. Even Christy saying Inky. I love it. Yeah, it gets him out of the way for a while. I mean, that name Inky. It's just Inky and Palps. How good's that? I put those two in the same scene together. Or Palpy. Yes, well, it is the Grand. Is this the Grand Inky as in Rebels? Yes, it is. So there you go. All right. So this brought up the biggest question of the entire thing. Reva knows that Anakin is Vader, or Vader is Anakin. And of course, how is this possible? There's a lot of discussions regarding this, and it has come down to the fact that realistically, she shouldn't know. Only Palpatine knows. Obi-Wan, actually, well, Obi-Wan knows that Anakin became Vader, and Yoda knows, right? It's meant to be one of those closely guarded secrets. So how on earth did she find out? What do you reckon, dude?
This might be something to do why she holds such animosity to Obi-Wan. Because if she's found out that Obi-Wan didn't kill him and let him survive like that,
No, the question is, how does she know that Anakin Skywalker was alive?
We don't know, but I think this will tie into why she holds so much hate and animosity to Obi-Wan. I think this will be part of the answer, how she knows, as is going to be the answer to why she hates him so much.
Yeah, that's a simple way of looking at it, because even as is brought up here, even Kenobi didn't know that Vader was still alive, right? So, and that's easily explained. He doesn't watch the news. He's not on the HoloNets, doesn't watch TV. And of course, Vader may have been kept out of the public eye, so most people don't know he's around.
The interesting thing, we were talking about the recap, and one of the things they said in the recap, which I think everything in there was very important, you hear the scene where he says, "I will not kill Anakin."
Yeah.
So I presumed that he might have known he was alive because he left him alive. Maybe not that he knows he's Vader, but he see the security?
No, hang on. Obi-Wan Kenobi knows that Anakin turned into Vader, right? They mentioned it. Yoda and he talk about it, right? He consumed by the dark side of the Force, Darth Vader, right? That's a no-brainer. What Kenobi thinks is after he left him on Mustafar, picked up his lightsaber and buggered off, that Anakin carked it. Boom, done. Pack up, go home. We're all finished, right? Now, of course, in this timeline, Ben has not seen Vader anywhere. So he's gone and forgotten, and that's the end of that until this point right here. Okay.
But has no one seen Vader in this timeline?
That's the question. So, but even if Vader was out and about, it doesn't mean that he was on the nightly news that people are seeing. He could have just be sort of operating in the shadows somewhere. Clearly, if he's hunting down Jedi, he's getting the Inquisitors to do that. So maybe he's just not a focal point. Either way, Kenobi didn't know about it, right? I can deal with that. That's not a problem. The question, and it has been brought up here about whether it'll circle back to it later, is how does Reva know? Right?
Yeah.
It's one of the most closely guarded secrets in the universe. The entire universe thinks that Anakin died. He was the poster boy for the Jedi. It's not a good image to say, oh, he survived and he's still kicking around as Darth Vader. You want in your universe to think he carked it. And of course, how does she know that? So maybe they will explain it, but it's something that some people have brought up and thought, hang on, how does she know? How would she know he's Anakin Skywalker?
I said, I reckon we'll get more flashback scenes, and maybe you'll see a scene where the clones, they're hiding from the clones, and the clones call him Lord Vader in front of her or something like that as a child.
Yeah, I don't know. Grant has said, it doesn't know. Sorry, go on.
Anything we say is just speculation at the moment because we just don't know.
Absolutely. But it's an interesting question to bring up. And I thought of it straight away. And I thought, oh, maybe I've missed something. But I heard other fans bringing it up and thought, okay, it's not just me. Other people are saying the same thing. It's like she's a low-level gutter trash, if you will. And she knows something that maybe even the other Inquisitors don't know. So it was just a good observation. And, of course, now that Kenobi knows, well, the cat's out of the bag. Anyway, doesn't Vader kill those that he knows he's Anakin? I think that's in the comics, I think. So don't quote me on that, Grant. You probably know more about that than I do. I don't think she holds hate for Obi-Wan. I think the Inquisitors are all vying for favor. Oh, that's a known fact. Yeah, they're all fighting against each other, just sort of like push themselves up the food chain. But yeah, she's clearly got a bit of a thing for Kenobi, and they all know he's around somewhere. So yes, but by that same token, I mean, obviously the Grand Inky, he wanted to capture Kenobi for himself, clearly to make himself look good in the eyes of Vader and the Emperor and whatever else. So, yes, there's definitely a power struggle. But Reva's the driving force. She definitely wants him more than anybody else, where all the other guys are chasing other Jedi. So
it's brought up specifically about 3 times where different people talk to her about what's her obsession with Obi-Wan.
Yeah, and it'd be very, very curious. And it could be a really, really good twist that we'll probably get at some point.
Yeah.
If Reva was a youngling who witnessed Anakin attacking the temple, yeah, it's a good one. It's certainly positive. She did survive, right? So maybe in another flashback, we will see her as a youngling seeing Anakin, even though she may not twig that he's Darth Vader at that point.
That's what I'm saying. She might see a clone commander call him Lord Vader.
Yeah, it's a good point. So, all right, we'll see what happens. Speculation now. Hopefully it doesn't become rubbish. Exactly right. You hope that the end result will be quite a good one. And was it, unless she was recruited by Vader? Yeah, but Vader wouldn't tell her that he was Anakin, right?
Yeah.
So that gap is still there, right? How does she know that he's Anakin Skywalker? That's the bit. Anyway, as you said, it's speculation. We'll cross those
She,
bridges later on.
she
What?
felt him.
What?
She felt him.
Yeah, exactly right. So yeah, but it's an interesting sort of point. Okay, and now that Kenobi knows that Vader is still alive, because clearly at this point he thought he is long gone. Anakin died, Vader died, all the rest of it. He wakes up. Now the thing I found about this was a fantastic moment for the episode. You hear the breathing; it's all good. The only thing that detracted from it, even though it's a very, very small nitpick, is we got to see Anakin or Vader like this in Rogue One. So if Rogue One had never shown those sequences on Mustafar, this would be the first time you ever see Anakin, Vader inside the back to tank thing, whatever it is, and that would have been like, oh my god, that's awesome. But we've seen it sort of before. So if there was a downside, that'd be it.
The thing I wonder about this, he doesn't seem to have the damage on his head looking at that picture that we know that he's got. I did think he looked a bit too healed and a bit too good to be Darth Vader. What did you think?
I didn't really sort of analyse, but you are right. There's some big ass gashes that are still missing from his head. So he's still got another few years to get them put on there. So, but you are right. He does look relatively neat and tidy. So, I don't know. So, anyway, so either way, Vader now knows that Kenobi's alive, and we'll see where it all leads from there. Hope do we see another flashback showing who saved Grogu? No, because then Grogu will become the center of attention. All the fans will go, "Oh my God, Grogu's in Kenobi." They will not give a rat's ass about any other character. It will just destroy the credibility of the show. So, no, if they do it in Mandalorian or whatever, fine. But Grogu, he's out of the picture. He's gone. We don't need to see him in this, right? I think everybody's sort of. I've even heard other people say the same thing. Don't put him in there. It'll ruin the credibility of the program. Lando, was it Reva's one of Lando's many illegitimate children? Oh, there you go. So what have we here? Very, very cool. And yeah, no more Grogu in this instance. Absolutely. And now, believe it or not, oh God, I'm sick of talking. 2 hours of Star Wars can do that to you. Guess what? It's our time for some Christie's Crimson Yawns. How good is this? So while Christy gives us our yawns out of 10, dude, what are your thoughts on episode 2?
Well, I liked this because it was so different from episode 1, and I liked it because if they hadn't shown the second episode, we wouldn't have seen Vader this week. So I thought that was good too. I probably liked episode 1 better out of the 2, so I'd probably give it an 8 rather than 8.5.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. It was just number one. It just had a lot of good things working for it, as we discussed earlier.
Yeah.
And this one was definitely very, very good. But it's, not bad. It's just not as good, because there's very little, not as much character development in episode 2 that there was in episode 1. Ben is now just on a mission. Find Leia, bring her back to the thing and all that. So, yeah, exactly right. So Christie's Crimson Yawns out of... She's gone the 5 yawns, which is not too bad. I think that's highly acceptable. So I
think that's kind of
very good.
As our opinion, it's very similar on entertainment level as the first episode.
Yeah, exactly right. Crimson Yawn, you have drunk too much red cordial. Yes, exactly right. It all started from when we were in the book of Boba Fett, and Christy was just saying how much he was yawning through the episodes, and we ended up making a scoring system out of it, which is kind of cool. Gavin said at the end of Rots, Yoda tells Kenobi he will teach him how to communicate with Qui-Gon. Will we see that? You would assume so, because he's clearly trying. And as we said earlier on, I think you may have missed it, Gavin, he has to learn how to do that, because when Kenobi dies, he then has to become a Force ghost, and he'll obviously learn that from Qui-Gon. So, yes, I think assuming it's Liam Neeson popping up at some point, which will be very, very cool to see. Yes, you can sit there and go, Qui-Gon, my master, mate, everything's gone to the complete crapper. How do I get in the hovel? My Eopi's sort of showing its age. I'm cutting up meat on a Krayt dragon. I stink to high heaven. I can't get my T-16 Skyhopper to Luke. Help me, Qui-Gon Jinn. You're my only hope. What do you reckon, dude?
Yeah, no, I think as an episode, it was great and self-contained, and as part of a series, it was good enough because it moved the plot along as well and didn't sort of tread water.
Yep, totally agree. It's a very good series. It's only got a few episodes left. It'll be a nice contained storyline, and I think it has some very good places to go. And we shall see what happens with episode 3. So anyway, look, it's been 2 hours. Oh my God, we desperately wanted to keep this under 2 hours. We've done just that. I think it's absolutely awesome. We'll see how things pan out. Any final words before we sign off for the night, Mr. Aron?
No, just before we sign off, we've got the other show that's on the Sci-Fi channel tomorrow night, which is Toys on Trial, looking at G.I. Joe stuff. And then we're back on Wednesday night with Rip It Off the Card.
Oh, mate, you can't get enough of us. What can I say? Absolutely fantastic. All right, we're going to buzz off, leave you to it, everybody. We'll see you back next week to discuss episode 3. We'll see what comes out of that. And we should have some good time. So in the interim, make sure the dark side of the force is with you. There you go, Mr. Aron. What do you reckon?
Or be one with the living force.
There you go. All right, catch you guys. Have fun. Bye.
Have a good night.